Pod Mortem would like to thank Original Cinematic for sponsoring this week's episode. Original Cinematic is an independent production company that has made it their mission to create, produce, and promote films that are inclusive, honor women, promote the LGBTQIA+ community, and provide prominent positions and roles to POC actors and filmmakers, and promote the films of marginalized and underrepresented populations. These are all things that are extremely important to our podcast as well.
Original Cinematic is currently accepting scripts and treatments. Both William and Xxena Rush are also available via email or Zoom to discuss writing and provide input and resources to all aspiring writers free of charge. Their information will be made available in the show notes. There may be delays due to a hectic schedule and all projects being read on a first-come, first-served basis, but everything will be read and responded to. William Rush has individually produced numerous projects including Pack is Here, Before, The Cottage, The Winemaker, and Day by Day. Their multi-award-winning film Group premiered and was celebrated at multiple film festivals as well as screenings, both in person and via Zoom that were graciously made available to us and our patrons.
Their next film, Immersion, has been completed. The award-winning Sweetener is in development. Fetish begins shooting in September, and Encore will begin next spring. Their documentary, Women in Conversation, is slated for a September release, and we are looking forward to each and every one of them. It is truly an honor to partner with Original Cinematic, and we can't thank them enough for their contribution to our show. And now, back to our regularly scheduled program.
Salutations! Welcome to Pod Mortem. I'm Travis Hunter, joined as always by my co-hosts, my sister, and my brother-in-law.
Hi, I'm Reneé Hunter Vasquez.
Hi, I'm John Paul Vasquez.
This week, we're broadcasting live from the Kappa Delta Sorority House, discussing the 1986 science fiction horror comedy, Night of the Creeps. This film was written and directed by Fred Dekker. Night of the Creeps acts as a love letter to the B-movies of Dekker's youth, mashing familiar genre conventions into a memorable and entertaining pastiche. With an interesting story and relatable characters, a scintillating score, and impressive makeup and creature effects, this film would rise above its initially poor box office performance to become a cult classic and a memorable slice of 1980s horror. This film was suggested to us by friends of the show, Lala Tamez, Noreen S., Brandon Dennison, Naomi, Dee, Scott Troutman-Wise, Beth Bauer, Stephen Junius, Martin Shaw, and Angel Face. We'd like to thank each and every one of them for their continued support of the show, as well as this suggestion. So, Night of the Creeps, what were your first impressions on the film?
So this was the first time I seen this movie. I'm not even sure if I've heard of it before like the show or anything.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've probably heard it brought up a couple of times since we've done the show, but I've never seen it. I don't know anything about this. I don't know what it is. I don't know anything. Watching it for the show, I absolutely love what's going on here. Like this was what I needed. This was pretty good. It's up my ass. You know what I mean? It's great.
Yeah.
It lives there. You know, that's okay. With everything else I like. You know, kind of like
Right
a
up
kangaroo.
there.
Yeah.
A kangaroo.
Kind of
But
like...
the other way, you know.
He's gonna whoop our asses after
Yeah,
in true kangaroo fashion.
That's what he means.
But you know what I mean. You know, this movie's very silly. This is something that I did enjoy. It is a turn your brain off and just fucking watch it. Just enjoy what's going on. The movie doesn't take itself serious. There was a few times that I kind of watched it and I was like, that reminded me of something else later on. And then I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. But this movie does a really good job of, I know I said not taking itself serious, but not taking itself serious. And it plays to the strength of what's going on in the movie because it's very fucking wacky, but it is, I feel like this was a little, breath of air just to kind of like, hey, where did this come from? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I had never even heard of this before people started requesting it. And so when we were trying to put the month together for the schedule, we rely pretty often on, movies that are most requested or like that people are really excited about. And so this was on a short list. We were thinking about it, and then we looked it up and saw Tom Atkins, and we were like, all right, we'll do it. We'll do Night of the Creeps, I guess. But yeah, I had never seen it either. Like I said, I had never even heard of it before people were requesting it, and like requesting it with a lot of excitement. It was a fucking blast.
Yeah.
We were talking off mic earlier, and it's very much from the first scene. Are you in or are you out? You know what I mean? It is not, oh, I thought I was watching this and it turned, no. It's like, from the very beginning, like you said, we are not taking ourselves seriously. We're here to have a good time. The lines in this are fun. Like, the lines, and John Paul had started it before me and said that there were Scream vibes for him. And it's like watching it, I'm like, oh, we're self-referential. This is hilarious and just fun. I mean, Tom Atkins is fucking hilarious. And I watched interviews with him. It seems like he had such a great time. It seems like the whole cast had such a great time. And I feel like the love of what they were doing and just the fun that they were having really comes through. It's just a fucking blast. And it's one of those movies, we talk about it a lot, that I feel like had we watched this as kids, we would have been fucking obsessed.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, this was my first time, and I had a fucking blast.
No, I agree with both of you. And it's the same thing. I have never heard of this film in my life.
Yeah.
And then so many people are requesting it and asking us to cover it. And it's like, I feel like I've completely missed the boat on something.
Yeah.
Which is honestly kind of exciting because it's already got like this built-in cult status. And you're like, oh, let's see what the fuss is about.
Yeah. And again, the fact that we did not even know Tom Atkins is in
No.
this. Like, we were fucking blind. Like, we had no idea.
The lore of this man continues to grow.
Yeah, no shit.
I swear to God. And he is such a remarkable part of this film.
Yes.
For me, I'll talk a little bit more about first impressions, but there is an emotional weight to this film that surprised the hell out of me.
A couple times.
Yeah. And it actually really does work. And that is something that the director talked about, which I'll get to a little bit later. But I agree. This film is just so much fun. It really is putting so much into like a blender of so many different ideas and so many different subgenres to create something really, really interesting and original.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is. He had talked about it in interviews. Dekker, this is a pastiche of just B movies just thrown in. He called it like a stew. And I'm like, yeah.
Okay,
for sure.
Yeah.
I feel that completely. I really do like a lot of the effects. Some of the effects are like really hilariously charming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that only lends itself to what it's trying to do.
Right.
And it is kind of a very, very convenient but really smart get out of jail free card. We're doing a pastiche of B movies, and it's like, oh, that didn't work. Well, it's a B movie. So
Yeah, well, duh. Well, we didn't want it to work.
yeah. So I just think that the only thing that I kind of have like anything really like about is I feel like there are, and we talked about it a little bit off mic, there are some seemingly like dropped plot points or where things lead. There are moments that he talked about on commentary that were supposed to go somewhere, and it seems like, I don't know if it was a matter of editing or the studio to where they didn't, and I'll point out a couple of them as we go. My biggest complaint, and this keeps happening to us, I don't like our protagonist.
No, he sucks.
Yeah, he's not great.
And he's so overshadowed.
Yes.
Like, we'll get into it, but come on.
I think that's the thing is like so often it's been like these side characters or these sidekicks that are just way cooler.
Yeah.
And it's not the actor.
No.
It's the character. I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, like you're fucking pissing me off.
I think we felt the same way about Charlie Brewster.
Yes.
But this is just another one where it's like, man, and I do, and I think that's something that's really, really interesting is that a lot of times, B movies, you watch them, you enjoy them, you have fun, turn your brain off.
Yeah.
Like you said, this, I actually come away with it. There are characters I care about.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so when things do happen, it's upsetting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And so I really appreciate that. But I think some things work really well in this film for me. There are a few things, like you had said, this opening where you're like, are you in or are you out? I was out. And I was like, oh, like starting there and then having to do the script, I was like, oh no.
You're like, I fucked
What have
up.
I done?
There were some design choices.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Indeed. But there are other things that are just like brilliant aesthetically and in their execution.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I just think this movie's a lot of fun, and I completely understand this cult status.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's so quotable.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
But I did want to talk a little bit about the production, kind of how this film came to be. I watched a featurette called Birth of the Creeps, and I also read an article in Fangoria to get all of this information.
Okay.
So the story of this film kind of begins in Dekker's childhood with his love of B-movies of all subgenres. And he said at the age of 12, he actually got his first camera and started making his own little movies.
Oh, very nice.
So directing for him was always the goal and the hope. And his dream was to make the ultimate B-movie, he said.
I mean,
Yeah.
So fresh out of college at UCLA, and interestingly, having made friends with a ton of future screenwriters and filmmakers, he mentioned Shane Black, he's in the film in a cameo, we'll talk about a little bit later, but he wrote Lethal Weapon. He directed Iron Man 3.
Damn.
God damn.
Like just a ton of, I think it was The Predator, one of the newer ones he directed and wrote. He was in Predator and did uncredited rights. Like, it's a ton of these people. Ed Solomon and Chris Matheson, I think, did Bill and Ted.
Damn.
So it's like this group of friends of just people who went on to do so much stuff in the industry.
Yeah.
All right.
But Dekker said that they made their own fair share of little projects together. And it was kind of like his version of film school. And he called it an opportunity to learn by screwing up.
I love that.
But it was in the early 1980s whenever he got hired by Steve Miner. And we'll get there. But he wanted him to write a spec script for an American remake of Godzilla.
Huh.
And unfortunately, it never came to be. Dekker said that it's the greatest thing he's ever written, but
Wow. But we'll never
Unfortunately.
see it.
Yeah.
but after this falls through, he eventually does write something else for Miner.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the story for the 1985, as Nay would say, horror classic
Yes.
or
Greatest
cinematic
film of all time. Yeah.
It is.
House. The film House. But it was after the success of this that he actually wrote a spec script for Aliens.
Oh, wow.
And unfortunately, that also didn't get picked up.
Damn.
And so he's kind of not necessarily in a limbo, but he's like, I want to get started with the dream of directing.
Mm-hmm.
He's writing a lot of story, like a lot of spec scripts, but directing, he still hasn't had the opportunity. And so he realizes all these ideas that he's had gestating since childhood, all these B-movie plans and hopes, and the love of the subgenre, he decides that this is the perfect way for him to break in as a director, is by funneling all of this passion into this first project.
All right.
This was the first thing he directed?
This is his directorial debut.
Oh my God.
It's great.
Which
Yeah.
is shocking, honestly, because there is a lot of confidence in this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he had said that whenever he was on set, there were moments where he felt like he was actually living up to this role as a director, and he felt the confidence of the crew growing for him.
Oh.
Okay.
Where he was orchestrating shots, and he's like, I think they're on my side.
Yeah.
This is so ambitious.
Yes.
Like I'm very surprised because he fucking nailed it.
Yeah. I think he had done a couple of short films up until then, but this is his feature debut.
Hell yeah.
That's wild.
But he saw Night of the Creeps as something that could possibly be foolproof if he did it right. And he said that his directing debut had to be something that couldn't possibly fail in order to kickstart this career. And so his idea was that he had to make a movie that had already been made.
Okay.
And that's when he started researching films of the 1940s, Plan 9 from Outer Space, exploitation films, and he's gathering this list of archetypes and ideas that he sees are prevalent in a lot of them. And this is really, honestly, how a pastiche is created.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he finishes his script in 2 weeks.
Oh my God.
Some sources say 1 week.
All right.
But he finishes it. And to him, he called it the last B movie because he said, after you see this one, you won't need to see anymore because we've paid homage to all of them.
Okay.
Which is a great selling point.
Yeah.
But after he finishes it, he attaches himself as director and basically says that it will not be sold unless I'm also directing it.
All right.
And his agents are like, all right. And so they send it to Charles Gordon, who's a producer. He got called by the agents at CAA, and he just falls in love with the script immediately. And he calls the head of TriStar, who I think that he had worked with previously, and he was so in love with this project that he lied to the head of TriStar. He says, I have 3 other studios that are interested in this. He hadn't sent it anywhere.
That's brilliant.
It
Wow.
is.
Well, it's like a toddler. They see somebody else might want it. Yeah. That's brilliant.
And he knew it would work, and it did.
Yeah.
And so the head of TriStar, he reads it, and he says, no notes.
Damn.
And he says that he wants to make this picture.
Okay.
And so there are a couple of hiccups on the way through production, kind of difficulties with a bit of, not pushback from the studio, but things that needed to be changed or improved. There's something about screening that I'll talk about a little bit later.
Okay.
But the real problem came with marketing. They randomly find this 1-sheet ad for Night of the Creeps in one of the trade publications, and it's a picture of a zombified hand reaching in through a door trying to open it from the inside. And Charles Gordon said, there was a movie just last year called House where the marketing is a zombified hand ringing the doorbell.
Yeah.
He said people are going to think that they've seen this film before, and the studio was like, nah, it's fine. And then they decide not to release it nationwide or wide release. They release it regionally. And so, according to what I read about the box office, at least what is listed on Wikipedia, it made about $500,000 on a $5 million budget.
Oof.
Damn.
And so Gordon even shared on that featurette that there was a very glowing positive review in the New York Times, and it said, this film snuck into town practically unannounced.
Oh, man.
He said, so if you can think about how bad the marketing was, if the New York Times is saying that.
Yeah.
And Dekker, of course, he said he puts his heart and soul into this, and it seems like nobody cares. And so it did kind of live that life for a little bit, but then, as we know, in time,
it found its people.
it did.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's a very, very inspiring story in that way, in that, you know, when you believe in something enough and you are coming at it from a place of passion, you do put your all into it. Just because it doesn't seem to work out at the very beginning, look at what it can grow into.
Yeah.
Night of the Creeps.
Yeah.
Now, before we infest this film's brain, we would like to issue a warning for spoilers. Pod Mortem is a very in-depth podcast, and in thoroughly discussing horror films, we have no choice but to spoil a thing or two. If you don't wish to be spoiled, please go watch the film, then come back and enjoy the show. If you've already seen the film or don't care about spoilers, let's scream like banshees. So the film begins with an eerie and foreboding score of synth accompanying the opening credits, which rise in sky blue against a black background. But within that background, fluorescent letters in a Creepshow-esque font float away from a tangled mass, eventually spelling out the full title, Night of the Creeps. So the titles I read were designed by a guy called Ernest Farino,
Okay.
and he did work on The Terminator.
All right.
Oh.
He did animation work on The Thing.
Oh.
Damn.
Like, he has a ton of credits, but I did also hear that the light sky blue text that's rising is a reference to The Shining.
Okay.
Excellent.
All right.
Take a shot.
Take a shot. The music, though, was composed by Barry Dvorak, and we just talked about him on The Exorcist 3.
Okay.
But apparently Dekker went to him initially and said that he wanted an orchestral score like Jerry Goldsmith.
Okay.
Oh.
And Dvorak was like, look, sometimes you just can't beat rock and roll and synthesizers.
Yeah.
And that's true.
And yeah, and I think that it's perfect for what this film is.
For the film,
yeah.
it fits it perfectly.
Because Dekker told him, he said, we're doing a pastiche, not a parody, so just don't have music that like makes fun of what we're doing here.
Yeah.
All right.
But it works.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I did this little, just the title of it like that. I was like, I felt, again, it didn't really give away too much. Just like there wasn't anything going on in the background. It just shows that. And then I was like, oh, so it's a mystery, huh?
Well, I feel like even it sets the vibe.
Yeah.
Like it sets the whole tone.
It does, but there is nothing that could have prepared me for what we're about
Not
to see.
at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Because after the opening titles, we fade in on a long, dark corridor lined with metal grates, steam hissing from the openings, and at the far end, we see a large circular door. The camera presses toward it slowly, but suddenly, a fleshy extraterrestrial being bursts from a side hatch at full sprint, clutching a steel cylinder. His face gnarled and his eyes white. This is Alien Zombie, played by Daniel Frischman.
What was that?
You know what that was.
me checking out.
Yeah.
I had to pause already because I was like, hold the fuck on. Even the title, nothing about that implied any alien anything to me, and certainly not a fucking alien that looks like that.
That's what I'm saying. When we got the title card, it was just that, Night of the Creeps. And I was like, okay, there's no, like I said, giving away anything. And then you're right, T, we dip into this.
Mm-hmm.
And that ball sack's in a hurry.
All right.
Like, he's got somewhere to go. But this is not at all what I expected.
No, and I think, like you're saying, like even just the title Night of the Creeps, I saw the poster, and it's like a completely different subgenre.
Yes.
And so we continue.
Yeah.
The music grows tense as Alien Pursuer number 1 and Alien Pursuer number 2, played by Kevin Thompson and Joseph S. Griffo, chase after him, blasting at him with their weapons, which emit a bright purple projectile. Alien Zombie reaches an adjacent circular door, smashing a panel with his fist to open it and closing it behind him quickly before his pursuers can catch up with him. In their wild blasting, the panel is destroyed, which the pursuers discover and can only offer one word in their alien language. Damn.
I did laugh because the subtitle said in Alien.
Yeah.
But inside the hatch, Alien Zombie finds a slot in the wall, which he promptly slides the cylinder into. But outside, the alien pursuers are mobilizing and strategizing, arming themselves with heavier artillery, adamantly announcing that experiment must not get off this ship. The pursuer aims through his sights, firing a blast that explodes the door off of its hinges in a burst of sparks and a cloud of smoke. The alien zombie stares down his pursuers through his cloudy eyes, but we watch as the cylinder, expelled from the alien ship, drifts rapidly through the blackness of space. As it disappears into the cosmos, the camera dips down from the stars to planet Earth, and accompanied by the sound of Smoke Gets in Your Eyes by the Platters, we find a large sorority house in black and white in the year 1959. Just want to say Smoke Gets in Your Eyes was also the title of the pilot episode of Mad Men.
Yes, I thought that every single time the song came on.
Yeah.
Before we move forward, because this part of the film I think is kind of fucking perfect, honestly, I did want to talk about these ugly ass aliens because thankfully we do not see them again. I saw an interview with David B. Miller. He was the effects supervisor. He worked on Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, wow.
And I want to say 5 as well, but he worked on the original at this point. But he said that the aliens were Dekker's design. And that the parameters that he gave him were that he wanted baby bodies,
Okay.
giant heads,
Right.
and big frowns.
All right.
I mean, and it's all there.
Yeah.
He said that he sketched it out and then he ended up making like a tiny sculpt of it, and Dekker was thrilled with the way that they looked. And so the bodies were just foam rubber.
Oh, wow.
And the heads were mechanical. So on two of the aliens, I'm assuming the pursuers, they could move their mouths. And on the pursuee, he could move his eyes.
All right.
And so he said it was extremely simple. The mechanical head, foam rubber body, and that they were just running around in it.
Wow. Well, I'm glad someone was thrilled with the look of it.
Yeah.
Their faces.
Yeah.
Well, I was like, I thought that they were mad. And then every time we cut to them, I was like, oh no, this is what y'all look like.
But a group of uncredited college students gather outside of the sorority house as the camera glides over them and into the street, where we find Johnny, played by Ken Heron, pulling up to park on the curb in his Thunderbird convertible. So I did hear on commentary that these sorority houses are actually the real sorority row at the University of Southern California.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the interiors are used too. And then there are some scenes later, and I'll tell you where they were shot because it is kind of wild.
Yeah. That's really cool, though, honestly. Because it does, and this whole little segment we're getting into is fantastic.
Yes.
Surfer rock music on his radio overtakes the platters on the soundtrack, but it is soon interrupted by an emergency news broadcast. The uncredited newsman shares an update from the King newsroom that authorities at the Crestridge Institute for the Criminally Insane have requested an all-points bulletin. But before he can continue, Johnny shuts it off.
Firstly, now is not the time to be shutting the fucking radio off.
Yeah.
We need to hear the end of that sentence. Secondly, did you say King's newsroom?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
The first of many.
Yeah.
Yes.
I will say as well, this, again, my childhood mind and my idea of B-movies is connected to an episode of Futurama where they went and saw that film about don't date robots or whatever.
Yeah.
Or yeah. It is. But this happens in that movie.
Yeah.
So it's like this, we're already starting with this really like cliche setup for a B movie.
Yeah.
When it's like, watch out for...
Yeah. Nope. It doesn't matter, but I don't think that movie on Futurama was Don't Date Robots because there were just robots in it. It was a human that was doing all the damage.
No, you're right. I think the Don't Date Robots was the Lucy Liu one.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
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 Oh, yeah. They were not happy
No.
about that. But Johnny steps out of the car and approaches the front door of the Kappa Delta sorority house. Up in her bedroom on the second floor, sorority girl on phone, played by Catherine Britton, paints her toenails, gossiping about some dreamy guy, while behind her, sorority girl with hairbrush, played by Leslie Ryan, lives up to her credit. Sorority girl on phone shares news about a recent breakup regarding some guy called Ray, who she says is a cop and has no future. Interesting.
Yeah.
But we pan over to a nearby bed to find Pam, played by Amy Cadigan, resting on her stomach and reading a book. When asked on the other end how she heard about this breakup, sorority girl on phone says that Pam told her, reminding her friend that they're roommates. Pam smiles at this, but suddenly, Johnny tosses a small rock at the upstairs window, which gets her attention. As she makes her way to the window, the girl on the phone calls her friend a Gomer and asks if she's seen Plan 9 from outer space yet. Very, very good.
Just straight up.
Yeah.
But Pam peers through the window, a warm smile spreading from cheek to cheek when she sees Johnny standing on the lawn out front, jovially waving at her. We cut to a crowded makeout point, cars parked and overlooking the city lights from atop a hill. Put Your Head on My Shoulder by Paul Anka plays on the radio as the camera cranes down to find Johnny and Pam sitting together in his convertible, his arm around her as they gaze into the night through the windshield of the car. As Pam looks longingly into the sky, she recites, "Starlight, star bright, first star I..." But she stops, nestling into Johnny and asking him which star in the sky is the brightest. But a flashlight beams at them from the passenger side window, and young Ray Cameron, a police officer played by David Allen Johnson, asks them what they're doing out here, and if they heard about the All Points Bulletin about that nut bar who... But Ray then recognizes Pam, who offers him a cold hello, wrapping her shawl around her shoulders and looking away from him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a little uncomfortable.
And then you're like, oh, she said a cop. It's like, fuck.
I will say we learn who this character becomes.
Yeah.
This is some excellent casting because not only in looks, but that vocal tone.
Yeah.
I'm like, did you
No.
like ADR this dude or something?
I mean, maybe.
It's good.
It's very
It's
good.
really good.
But clearly wounded, Ray struggles to find the words, eventually just telling Pam and Johnny that they should go home before heading back to his cruiser.
He's better than me. I'd be like, no, get comfortable. Stay out here. Everybody else can leave. You
You
can
heard
fucking
that all
stay.
points bulletin? They retracted it.
Yeah, they
it
said
was fake.
Yeah. They got him.
They said go off alone. That's what it said.
Pam watches wistfully as he departs, Johnny left in disbelief that Pam knew him. She explains that Ray is just someone from her past. They just broke up, but all right. Like literally.
Yeah.
I mean, a minute ago was the past.
Oh, that's a harsh. Ooh. But she quickly returns to Johnny's embrace as they were before, asking once again which star in the sky is the brightest.
I thought this would throw more of a kink in their plans, but she just gets the fuck out. Like, she is not bothered
Oh, no.
by having seen Ray at all.
He's in the past.
He's in the past, yeah.
The stars shimmer above them as Johnny attempts to move past the awkwardness of the previous encounter. But there, in the sky, one celestial body emerges as the front runner, and as it grows in size, beaming a blinding light over them, it crash lands to Earth with a sizzling tail like a comet. Pam and Johnny, as well as the other gathered teenagers, stare in astonishment as the object sails through the nearby trees, hitting the ground with a thud and a cloud of smoke.
Meteor shit.
Johnny immediately turns the key in his ignition, his headlights switching on as he answers Pam's question, voting that to be the brightest star.
This kind of made me think of Killer Clowns. Weren't they at a makeout point and then the thing went by and they were like, let's go.
Well, I was like, that's why watching this, I'm like following the thing that crashed from the sky to the crash site. Never a good idea.
Oh, no.
Never advisable. Killer Clowns, Creep Show, fucking The Blob.
Yeah.
Let's stop doing that.
I never saw that one.
No.
Is that I just saw the blob.
Yeah.
But Johnny reverses out of the parking spot, exiting the lookout point and venturing off with Pam to find the crash site. Pam seems a bit uneasy, but Johnny pulls the car over on the side of the road, certain that the object landed somewhere nearby.
It did make me laugh because as they're pulling up, I don't think their mouths are moving at all.
You're not supposed to notice that, I guess. Or it's part of the charm.
For sure.
But as the car pulls to a stop, Pam remarks that this place gives her the creeps. A little interesting.
Yeah.
But Johnny responds by snagging a flashlight from his glove compartment and shining it into his face, letting out a spooky noise like a campfire tale. Pam just rolls her eyes and gives him a sarcastic laugh, but Johnny steps out of the car, walking around to her side and peering into the trees that line the road. Pam simply asks, "Johnny?" in an attempt to coax him back into the car, but Johnny just tells her to stay there as he continues onward toward the trees. Pam asks if he's joking, but the camera pans through the trees to follow Johnny on his path in search of the crashed object. I loved this tracking shot.
Yeah.
I was just very much amazed at how it just seemed to follow him completely through the trees seamlessly.
Yeah.
And they did talk about it on commentary. I guess they had created like a 50-foot long track for the camera to be on, and the ground was so incredibly uneven that it was really painstaking to get it done. But he was so certain of this exact shot, and they did it, and it's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the uncredited newsman once again cuts into the broadcast on the radio with another update. Police are continuing the search for a 35-year-old escapee from the Crest Ridge Mental Institute, who officials confirm has killed 4 orderlies in a brutal spree earlier tonight. Fear fills Pam's face as the voice continues that the police warn that the man is armed with a large fire axe and is believed to be moving west on Route 66 toward the Corman University area. Corman. Rest in peace, Roger Corman.
Yes.
The broadcast ends, switching back to the music on the radio station, but Pam notices a silhouette just in front of the parked car. When she switches on the headlights, two signs stand tall in hilarious proximity to each other. One for Route 66 West Highway and one for Corman University, which is apparently 3 miles away.
Yeah. I laughed out loud. And seeing those, it's like, okay, I know exactly what I'm speaking the language of the film.
Yes.
I get what you're doing.
That was, yes.
It's so funny.
Pam gasps as the camera closes in on her, and she barely is able to mutter the name of her date. But Johnny continues through the thickets to the sounds of crickets, his flashlight piercing through the brush until he illuminates a cloud of smoke which rises above the greenery. Pam continues to call out to Johnny, pleading with him a little too calmly to get back to the point. She offers, "I'll even let you fondle my breasts."
Come on, Johnny.
Yeah.
It's a good deal.
That's it. I mean, and he's like, what's this though? What's this hole in the ground?
But with an ominous music cue, a pair of legs steps into the frame, standing in the road at a distance from the car, and suddenly, a fire axe hangs at the side of those legs. They then lurch forward step by step as Pam continues to call out for Johnny, shouting that she's getting lonely out here by herself. But Johnny is far too preoccupied, having discovered the smoking crater created by the celestial object. As he approaches it, he discovers a very familiar large metal cylinder. But as he leans in for a closer look, the glass siding of it cracks, and a specimen bursts from it, sailing through the air and into Johnny's opened mouth. Why was his mouth open?
He was like, duh. He couldn't believe what he was saying.
Spit that out, man.
Yeah,
Yes. But so much of this happens, it really did remind me of Prince of Darkness.
Yeah.
When so much was transmitted into open mouths, and we were like, guys, please.
Will you stop? But Pam glances out into the trees, her cries falling upon deaf ears, as behind her, the camera arcs around her and we see the escaped patient that the radio warned about, played by Ivan E. Roth, slowly approaching the vehicle. He stands silent in his hospital gown as he raises his axe, and after a moment, he swings it directly at Pam. Before we see it make contact, we fade to black. Like you said, this setup is perfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
This opening of this film, the vibe of it, even motions of the camera, it captures this feeling of these 1950s B movies.
Yeah.
I would even say down to the cut right before, like all of it. It was excellent.
You can tell Dekker has a reverence for this era.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of noticing when I was watching it. Like you said, I know the alien part was a little, but going from that to this, and then you seeing the signs right there. She's too scared to call out for Johnny. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh man, you know what it is, but it is done so good. You can tell that they enjoyed what we're seeing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we've already been fooled like twice to go from the title to the aliens and then the aliens to this.
Yes.
Like, what else is this film?
And then the transition here, I was like, oh, wait. Hold on.
Because accompanied by the upbeat Let Go by Intimate Strangers, we get on-screen text reading Pledge Week 1986. We fade back in, this time in full color. The camera gliding over the street to the Beta's fraternity house, the large trees out front covered in toilet paper, and the front lawn filled with partying college students. The loud music and chatter pervades the area, but we suddenly hear the voices of Chris Romero and J.C. Hooper, played by Jason Lively and Steve Marshall, respectively, as the camera cranes down to meet them as they walk by the fraternity house on the sidewalk. So, Romero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hooper.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the JC is supposed to stand for James Carpenter.
Well, later the dude's like Carpenter Hooper. It's
Yeah.
like, what is this?
It's like you were just throwing.
It's just so funny.
Yeah.
And Jason Lively, I was like, man, I know his face from somewhere. I was like, I know that kid. He did Brainstorm in '83, but he did National Lampoon's European Vacation in 85. That's where I knew him from. He was the son, Rusty. And then he did The Possessed in 2017.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
He did Green Needle in 83?
Really?
All right. What did you hear?
Brains.
That's all I heard.
I'm so sorry. That was ridiculous.
No, you're not.
I'm not really. I wanted to say it was interesting to me. I saw on that making of, Jason Lively said he was disappointed when he got the role of Chris because he had auditioned for JC.
Really?
Yeah.
I can understand why you would be disappointed.
Yeah.
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 But I mean, he plays it well.
Mm-hmm.
I did want to talk about Steve Marshall though. First of all, I mean, he's like, it's a very like Seth Cohen prototype. He's great. I love him. But on that making of, he said that he had already like kind of grown up in the industry because his father was a film producer. So he started working as a PA and was working on a film in Yugoslavia where he met Robert Downey Jr.
Really?
And after learning this, I was rewatching it this morning. They favor each other a little bit. Think of him in this film.
Yeah.
Okay.
They do. They could be brothers or something. But he said that they became very close, and Robert Downey Jr. was like, you need to come to LA. He was like, that's where your career is going to take off. You can come, you can stay with me. I'll introduce you to people and we'll make this happen. So he said, he was like, okay, like I'll give it a shot or whatever. So he flies out to LA. Robert Downey Jr. picks him up from the airport, takes him to dinner, and by the end of the night, he had a manager and an agent.
Damn.
Wow.
He said he started auditioning, and 6 weeks later, he got Night of the Creeps.
Okay.
Good for him.
He
Yeah.
is the best. He's my favorite character.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody's favorite character, but he's fantastic in this.
Yeah.
As they walk together, Chris admits that he's depressed, but JC encourages him to cheer up, reminding him that this is college life. Toilet paper on the trees, spring in the air, a couple of bitchin' guys on the prowl for major league babes. But Chris tells JC to face it, calling them both dorks and lameoids, declaring that his grandparents have more sex than they do.
Arguably a really weird thing. to say.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, they have a loving marriage. I don't see what's wrong with it.
Yeah. What the fuck?
Let them have their fun. JC accepts this, though, but he says that Chris talks about it like it's a negative thing. Chris then asks JC for a favor, and JC is willing to oblige Chris whatever he wants. But Chris simply asks for JC not to try to cheer him up. JC leans on his forearm crutches, reminding Chris that when Chris is depressed, it makes him depressed. So he asks Chris for a favor in return. Cut out this being depressed shit. He reminds Chris that this is him talking here. He's his bud and he loves him. He reminds him of the bond they have, a warmth, a communication. But JC's voice fades away as Chris's attention is drawn to the smiling face of Cynthia, played by Jill Whitlow, who stands chatting in the middle of her group of friends. Romantic music overtakes the score as the camera presses in on Chris, his mouth agape as he watches Cynthia from afar, asking in a breath, "Who's that?"
Why do birds suddenly appear?
Oh, yeah.
But I'm like, dude, your friend is pouring his heart out and trying to like lift your spirits.
Yeah.
And he's like, duh. I mean, he's like, completely fucking tuned him out.
Yeah, and that's a real friend. He's not sugarcoating it for you.
Yes!
He's telling you, look, dude, we should be happy.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? What are you to be sad about? We're both here together. We're walking around. Even if we're nerds, we're doing it together, and
Yeah.
it's fine.
And this is Mark 1 in the negative column for Chris.
Yeah.
Yes.
There will be plenty of marks.
Real quick, if I may, Jill Whitlow. I looked and seen what she did because she kind of looks like she would be in a lot of 80s movies.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did look, and she did a small part in Weird Science in 85. She was in Mask, also in 85.
Wow.
She did Porky's in 81 and Twice Dead in 88.
Oh, damn.
So she was, because I was like, you look really familiar. I
Yeah.
know that, some actors, even if you just forget their name, you're like, I know I've seen you.
Yeah. On that making of, she just still seemed like she had so much love for this film and the making of it. Like, they talked about like being best friends and how like they would ruin takes because they kept like messing with each other and making jokes and making each other laugh. And it was funny to me in the context of this film because she said that during filming, immediately when she met Jason Lively, she said it was brother and sister energy, that she's very gullible and he's a prankster. And so she would fall for everything he ever said. He would fuck with her constantly. But she said she had a huge crush on Steve Marshall.
Really?
The whole time. And I'm like, it's so funny knowing that and watching the roles that they play in this. What was really like, I thought that was adorable.
And there is a chemistry.
Yes.
Like a very clear chemistry. But to Chris's question, JC asks who he's talking about. And without breaking his gaze, Chris points into the crowd, singling out who he describes as the vision, the angel, the goddess. JC sees her, joking that he thinks that she's the Morton Salt girl, before asking how the hell he should know. Then, to Chris's embarrassment, JC calls out over the crowd of college students, "Hey, honey! Yo, toots! What's your name?" Cynthia just laughs with her friends and returns to their conversation, and Chris asks JC to remind him to kill him sometime, and JC does so immediately. I thought, I was like, is this a throwaway line or is that?
Oh.
And so I was like, oh no.
Please, no.
But Chris asks what he should do, and JC says that he could always just stand there like an idiot and not do anything. He then relents that he's just joking, but Chris is dismayed as he watches Cynthia and her friends retreat inside of the walls of the beta house. JC remarks that he hates the betas, but he asks Chris if he wants to meet her or what. Chris, lost in a daydream, mutters that he wants to marry her. In jest, JC breaks it to Chris that he'll probably have to meet her first, joking that he doesn't make up the rules. But inside the beta house, the party is in full swing. A disco ball hangs overhead as college students crowd the floor, bathed in pink and purple light. Nightmares by Martha Davis and the Motels blasts over the speakers, and a sign hanging above the proceedings reads, "Betas are better."
This song is tearing it up.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
It really stole the show from the moment it was
Like, you may hate the betas, they got good music.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the camera sweeps through the crowd to find Chris and JC at the center of it all, looking about as out of place as they feel. Chris nervously pours himself a drink as he looks around in search of Cynthia. He takes a sip of the beverage, finally finding her and pointing her out to JC. She stands there, drinking a Pepsi from a Pepsi-branded cup, which I'm sure was... But she stands next to Steve, a jock played by David Oliver. Chris is annoyed to see that Cynthia is here with a guy, but JC tries to ease his pain, remarking that Steve looks like a bozo, calling him the missing link and pointing out that he has one continuous eyebrow. Chris replies that Steve also has her, but JC reminds Chris of the power of positive thinking, telling his friend to observe as he goes in for what he calls the main event. He says it's the final countdown, 3rd and 10, confidently stating that it's going to be beautiful and Chris will love this. As he makes his way over to the group, he hears the banal conversation that Steve is attempting with Cynthia, telling her that she should really go to one of his games sometime. She could sit on the bench and watch him play.
Ooh, fun.
But just as Cynthia replies that it sounds like fun, JC has made his way over, acknowledging Steve as Tiger. But once he learns Steve's name from a reluctant Cynthia, JC makes up a story that Steve actually has a phone call waiting for him, which Steve believes and heads off to answer it.
That's ridiculous as fuck.
Oh, yeah.
It is.
Steve tells Cynthia, "Later, Cindy," before taking off. I may be like the last person on the planet Earth to know this, but did you know that Cindy is a nickname for Cynthia?
No.
Yeah, I was a little confused because I was like, well, I thought her name was Cindy, but then it says her name is Cynthia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought the joke here was that he's just this dumb jock.
Oh,
Yeah.
that he doesn't know
He doesn't
her
even
name.
know her name, but then she gets called Cindy throughout this picture.
Yeah.
And I looked it up and they're like, oh yeah. And I'm like, am I the only human?
I didn't know that either. Now
Okay.
that I'm really thinking about it.
Okay.
No.
Good. I don't feel so bad.
I thought it was short for Cinderella.
Well, it could be.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
This is Chris's fairy tale, I guess. JC calls her Cindy, asking for her last name, but instead of answering, Cynthia just supposes that there isn't actually a phone call waiting for Steve, is there? JC, now, knowing that her name is Cynthia, somehow, he tells her that his time, much like Steve's intellect, is limited, and he directs her attention over to Chris, who he refers to as an attractive gentleman. Upon noticing that Cynthia is looking at him, Chris turns around nervously, spilling his drink all over the shirt of some random jock next to him. But JC continues that he is in fact Chris's agent, and it is vital that he obtains this information because the fate of the entire free world hangs in the balance.
Kid's got moxie, man.
Yeah. Guy, man.
I know, the wingman for the fucking agent.
Yeah.
Cynthia gives her full name, Cynthia Cronenberg.
Yeah, all right.
Not Cronenberg.
Yeah, you love it. But she asks why Chris didn't just ask her himself. JC says to tell him that, and Cynthia says that she would, but... And JC supposes that she has a boyfriend. Almost on cue, Steve returns annoyed, parking himself next to Cynthia, accusing JC of cruising, revealing that there was no call waiting for him at all. JC feigns confusion, asking, to Cynthia's amusement, what Steve's name was again. Chad? Biff? Riff? Steve reminds JC of his name and tells him that he doesn't think he's very funny. So I haven't laughed at one thing he said. JC retorts, assuming Steve thinks that he's about as funny as a crutch. This is a real idiom, by the way.
Really?
Never heard it in my life.
Oh, like
Okay.
serious as a heart attack or something?
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
I've never heard that one, though.
No. But JC leaves, Steve standing annoyed while Cynthia can't hide her interest. In Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No. It's no. And then he's just standing by fucking spilling drinks on people and
Yeah,
watching. It's
that.
like,
While
no.
this smooth operator.
Like that. You're fucking hilarious. You're bold. You're standing up to this fucking jock. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nah. Sorry, Chris. Sorry.
I did want to say, and you can feel it on commentary, Dekker said that this whole section, he took cues from John Hughes.
Absolutely.
But upon making his way to the other side of the room, Chris immediately accosts JC for all of the details about his conversation with Cynthia. JC shares that Cynthia knows her name, which he declares impressive for a sorority girl. And cutting through JC's sarcasm, Chris asks bluntly if Cynthia has a boyfriend. JC says that she didn't say, but he doesn't think so. He has no basis.
I know. I was like, it's wishful thinking. I know you don't want to, but like there's no grounds for that.
This whole time I thought Steve was her boyfriend.
Well, that's what it appeared.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Chris is overcome, swooning that this is it. He could possibly be in love here. JC inquires if Chris knows there's probably one thing he needs to do for Cynthia to take him seriously. And when Chris assumes that this means he'll have to join a fraternity, JC shares that he was thinking more that Chris just go and talk to her himself.
That part.
Chris puts his arm around JC, playfully smacking his cheek and telling him that he's so naive. But they turn to face each other, and an idea is clearly shared between them. We then cut to Brad, the head of the Beta fraternity played by Alan Kaiser. He sat at a bar in the fraternity house in front of his fraternity brothers, asking in disbelief, "So let me get this straight. You want to pledge to the Betas?"
He's like, sorry guys, this frat's 35 and up. They're like, damn it.
Yeah.
Guess I'll never get married.
Fuck.
At least he was up front.
It's nothing personal.
No, it's in the charter. I will say something I did learn on commentary that we'll talk about a little bit later. He is the head of the fraternity, played by Alan Kaiser, but he's surrounded by a group of fraternity brothers.
Yeah.
And these fraternity brothers are played by a certain group of people that they are played by them for a very particular reason.
Correct.
And we
Okay.
will learn.
Yeah.
But we see that sitting across from Brad are a very nervous Chris and JC. They confirm that they would like to join the betas, and Brad rises from his chair, asking what makes them think that they're beta material, and as he motions over to the other frat members, shares that they've already accepted most of the guys that they need to fill the roster for the semester. I will say Dekker had mentioned on commentary that he named this fraternity the Betas because apparently there was a very notorious fraternity at UCLA called the Betas, and so he did that on purpose.
Damn.
Okay.
It seemed like kind of a fuck you a little bit.
Yeah.
It does seem that way, yes.
Well, they're not great.
No.
But as Brad walks over and stands next to Chris, intimidating him with his presence, he says that they'd have to have something special to offer the fraternity. JC asks, "What about money?" And then he proceeds to rattle off about a dozen slang terms for money, and after a while, Chris tells him to knock it off. But Brad continues, telling the boys that he can't make them any promises, but he does have a proposal. He says that if they were willing to perform a little act of devotion, some kind of task that would prove the sincerity of their feelings towards their organization, and Chris interrupts, worried that he's asking them to have sex with a farm animal. But he asks, do we have to? As if he's willing to play the national anthem.
God damn it! I was going to say, Brad's like, you ever see the first episode of Black Mirror?
It's like something like that.
Y'all got Netflix or what?
But as the fraternity brothers chuckle, Brad calls this an interesting suggestion, but he rejects this offer, thankfully. The camera presses in as Brad reveals that they had something a little more challenging in mind, and his face grows sternly serious. But we cut to Chris and JC leaving the beta fraternity house, Chris finding the silver lining that at least they don't have to have sex with a farm animal.
Enough!
Yeah.
Stop bringing it
Yeah,
up.
nobody said that but you. Like, stop.
Yeah, he brought it up too many times.
Yes.
Yeah. Why would you bring that to their doorstep? They're like, no, we had something, but that's a great idea. It's like, oh my God, Chris. JC, though, jokes that Chris might like that, and then he wouldn't need Cynthia at all anymore. Chris isn't laughing, though. And he tells JC to shut up as they walk off towards their given task. But back inside, one of the frat brothers asks Brad that if these guys really pull this off, is he really going to let them into the fraternity? Brad just laughs, telling his frat brother to get serious as they clink their beers together.
They fucking suck.
Yeah.
But we watch as Cynthia walks up to Brad, giving him a kiss on the lips. So this is her boyfriend.
And honestly, it immediately makes me side-eye Cynthia.
Yeah.
Like, why are you with this dude?
Yeah, you were with that caveman dude earlier, and then now.
That's true. Well, he was the aggressor in that
Yeah.
situation.
And honestly, there's a moment later that I feel like what she says, I'm like, really? Like, we'll get there, but it's like, after all that you've seen and been through, and if you just turn around for 1 second, but we'll get to it. It's like, Jesus Christ.
Use your periphery, maybe.
But as they strike up a conversation, we crossfade to the drab white brick basement of the University Med Center. They did talk about this on commentary because the crossfade is pretty abrupt and strange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason for this is apparently Cynthia had a line. I don't know exactly what it was, because she says, oh, we're just getting ready for Rush or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
She, I guess, says to Brad something like, and then we can have a lot of sex later or something.
What the
And so
fuck?
I guess one of the producers was like, a little decorum, please knock it off. And so.
Well, honestly, she is still talking when you just can't hear what she's saying.
And you feel it's kind of strange as it happens, but you never would guess that it's because the producer was like, mm-mm.
Well, yeah, I don't think that fits here.
No. Dekker's like, yeah, you're probably right. That does make a lot of sense. I will say, though, I did learn as well on commentary, outside of the on-location shoot of Sorority Row, the majority of the film was shot in an old Woolworths building.
Okay.
Yeah, it was apparently going to be torn down. And so in this big, wide open space, they created a lot, if not the majority, honestly, of their sets.
I love that.
Another where they find something that's fixing to get destroyed.
Yeah.
Hold on, we can use that real quick.
Yeah.
So give us 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Some of them they use just outright. Like we'll see some stuff at a police station later. They just use the offices that were there.
Okay.
That's great.
Yeah.
But they did kind of outfit the basement to be that alien spaceship we saw at the beginning of the film.
Okay.
So it's very interesting how they use the space.
Yeah.
But making his way down the stairs is young scientist played by David Paymer. We just talked about him.
We sure did. So, if I'm not mistaken, we seen him in Drag Me to Hell.
Yeah.
That's right. He's the boss, right?
That's
That was
right.
driving me crazy.
That was 2009. He did, and I forgot because this was, I was 2. He was in Howard the Duck in 86. He did Get Shorty in 95.
Oh.
Really?
Yeah. And he did Gang Related in 97. So, I mean, again, this dude, we know his face.
Yeah.
We know who he
Most
is.
importantly,
Yeah.
Drag Me to Hell.
Yes. They did mention on commentary, and I did not know this, but like maybe sometime in the 90s, he was nominated for an Academy Award.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. It's like, good for you.
Yeah.
But walking down the hall and under hanging light fixtures, he reaches a key card entry system on the wall, next to a locked door and underneath a sign that reads, "No unauthorized personnel." He enters his card and the machine reads it, accepts it, and spits it back out to him, which you think would be enough, but he goes to enter the password on the keypad as well. But upon forgetting the last digit, he heads off frustrated to a nearby payphone. Typing in a phone number and sarcastically remarking that he at least remembers this number, he finally reaches Rudy, his roommate. He tells Rudy that he can't remember the combination, sharing that Rudy can find it for him in one of his notebooks on his desk. But unbeknownst to the young scientist, as he stands waiting for the mystery digit, Chris and JC have quietly snuck in through the door on the other side of the hall. Upon reaching the basement, Chris and JC speak at full volume. JC annoyed that there isn't a sign to show them the way, with Chris sarcastically asking if there should be a sign that reads, "Corpses to use in wacky fraternity pranks."
So I'm like, what the fuck did this dude tell y'all to do?
Yeah.
And how fucking stupid are y'all that you're going to go do it?
Yeah, I there's a lot going on here. And we're doing this again for what?
For Cynthia Cronenberg.
Yeah. But they make their way down the hall, and as Chris mutters that it has to be around here somewhere, JC notices the keypad with the partially typed in password. In a stroke of luck, or misfortune, we'll get to that. Upon reading the screen, which only lacks 1 digit, JC just presses 0 on the keypad, and the locked door suddenly slides open. Chris asks JC what the hell he just did, and JC says that he doesn't know, but he suggests that they head inside. Chris can't believe his ears, but while the young scientist's roommate is busy looking through the wrong notebook, Chris and JC head inside the laboratory. Silhouetted as they enter the dark room, Chris comments that this place is giving him the creeps. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
After a bit of back and forth and banter about finding the light switch, Chris finally locates it, illuminating the room in soft purple light. We see arrays of colorful buttons blinking on nearby lab equipment next to large metal cans of liquid nitrogen. The camera presses in on JC, his eyes fixed on the sight in front of him as he continues muttering, "Oh my God." And accompanied by a stab of synth in the score, we see it. There, frozen cryogenically in a large, clear cylindrical container, is the body of Johnny, who we first met in 1959.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like, okay, now we're coming back to that original story.
Yeah.
Just hope we don't see those aliens again.
That part.
That.
Why did they do this to him? Do we ever get
No.
closure on this? Because
Yeah.
I feel like we're forced to move on very quickly.
That is something that I did want to point out because I saw some production stills of something that does not end up in the film at all.
Okay.
There's a picture seemingly taking place in 1959.
Okay.
And it shows a scientist played by Kenneth Tobey, who was the lead in The Thing from Another World
Oh.
in 1951, the original.
Yeah.
And he's got Johnny on a table, and he's talking to another scientist. And so you can imagine that this scene kind of probably explains how they got him, why they froze him, etc.
All right.
It doesn't explain it's him being in the university lab, but...
No. But I mean, I think that, and I saw some interview with Tom Atkins where he had talked about getting to work with Kenneth Tobey.
Yeah.
And so it was like, oh, that's cool. And then you never see him in the film.
Yeah.
And so, but it does kind of take away from the surprise, because if we do have a scene knowing that Johnny was frozen,
you know it's going to come back.
Yeah. So this is more of a shock without that, but it does lack a pretty cool cameo.
Yeah.
But Chris approaches the container, observing the electrodes attached to Johnny's forehead, and he asks JC if he's sure that this man is dead. JC assumes it to be obvious that the man, at the very least, isn't well. But he ponders who the man could be, and after cracking a joke that it could be Walt Disney, Chris asks how the hell he should know it all and suggests that they get out of here.
Have you ever seen Futurama?
I mean...
Because this is reminding me of that.
We've been referencing a lot. Futurama.
I'm JC right now. Asking Chris. Yeah. Have you ever seen Futurama?
No, it's 1986. What is that? JC wonders how long the man has been in the container, positing it could be 1,000 years. No, I'm just kidding.
Maybe like on New Year's or like, you know.
No, but Chris asks sarcastically if JC thinks that he's the tour guide, which made me laugh, I will say. It's the only thing that Chris does that I like in this film. But he does suggest more vehemently that they leave. JC notices a panel of buttons in front of him, asking Chris to wait just a minute. But Chris, concerned about the police, reminds JC that their mission was to find a cadaver and dump it on the front steps of the POG house. He says that the guy in the tube is obviously part of some kind of experiment, so they should just leave. JC, however, remarks that he doesn't see any other handy takeout corpses around here and assumes this to be their best shot. As Chris looks around nervously, JC notices a large red label on the console in front of him. Cryogenic stasis system. He flips a few switches and the console comes to life, random buttons lighting up in full color. Chris smiles somewhat mischievously, remarking that JC didn't really just do that. It's like, why is he into it now? What is this kid's motivation? Well, he's in
love.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it almost seemed like he was like, in disbelief. He's like, I can't believe you just did that.
I couldn't believe he just did that.
No. But JC puts two and two together. Cryogenics. And he asks Chris if he's heard of freeze-dried coffee, comparing this to like a freeze-dried human, a corpsicle. Chris understands it. He says it's like suspended animation. And JC concurs, adding that you take someone while they're alive and you freeze them, then thaw them out 100 years later like a TV dinner.
Dun, 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 dun.
Really?
All right. No, I'm done. No more Futurama.
No, don't say that yet. We don't know. We don't know what's coming up next. With a sense of wonder, JC says that they're talking about total science fiction here. And suddenly, a large red button is seen in front of them on the wall, labeled Disengage. Upon noticing it, JC reaches for it with his crutch against Chris's objections. Meanwhile, upstairs, the young scientist finally gets the proper password, thanking Rudy for his help and heading back toward the laboratory. But in the laboratory, the glass door of the cryogenic chamber slides open, a haze of chilly air rising around the body of Johnny, which is strapped inside. Chris lowers the body out of the chamber, wrapping his arms around Johnny's chest and dragging him, admitting when asked that the body is both heavy and cold.
Imagine.
The scientist whistles his way down the hallway as JC asks Chris if he's going to be able to carry the body all the way back. But suddenly, Johnny reaches out, seizing JC by the wrist. JC screams wildly as he jerks away, and he and Chris hightail it out of the laboratory, running right into the young scientist and knocking him to the floor.
That was too much.
Yeah.
And they keep going.
Yeah.
They ascend the stairs out of the basement in a rush, and the scientist collects himself, retrieving his dropped clipboard, and inches his way into the laboratory. Bathed in the indigo light, the scientist finds Johnny's body laying supine on the laboratory floor. The scientist then kneels down to observe him, only to mutter, "Oh my God," before Johnny's hand reaches for his throat. In a low roar, Johnny's mouth opens, and a dark slug is expelled from his throat like a projectile. Chris and JC, however, have already made it back to their dormitory hall. They rush past the front desk and other students to finally make it to their bedroom door. Unlocking it and bursting inside, they collapse on their separate beds in their crowded dorm, catching their breath.
You guys just broke like several laws, I think.
Yeah, but if you just go to sleep, it doesn't...
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
Chris asks what they do now, and JC suggests that they get a couple of machine guns, burst the window out of the place, and tell him, "Come on in, you dirty coppers." He then uses his crutch like a machine gun, complete with sound effects. Incredibly fed up, Chris spits back that everything is a joke to JC tonight. JC very surprisingly responds with, "Hey, fuck you, Chris."
Drag him.
Yeah.
I was ready for it, but I was like, oh.
Well, look at everything that I have done for you tonight.
Mhm.
Yeah?
And
he
tried to keep the mood light, and you're like, everything's... No.
Yeah.
Because he cuts a promo on Chris. Telling him every single day he puts up with his moaning about what's her name and how he'll never fall in love again, but he's too chicken shit to do anything about it. And then this new girl Cynthia comes along, and JC says to himself that he sure as hell isn't ever going to get laid, so he might as well help out his best friend. The camera presses in on JC as he continues, recounting in mimicry, "JC, help! We gotta join the fraternity so she'll give me the time of day." And so JC says he went along with it. He busted his ass to help Chris, and he gets chicken shit all over again. He tells Chris that he pushes and he pushes and he doesn't give up, and why. He says Chris doesn't even know, and he doesn't even care that it's important to him that he's happy. And he says that if they have to act like jerks and get into trouble in order to do that, then what the hell? So yeah, to JC, everything is a joke, because if you take everything too seriously, you'll just end up depressed like Chris is. And he sums it up once more. So fuck you.
I'm applauding.
Yeah. And again, this is not our protagonist, really? Are we sure?
Yeah.
We're not going to get a bait and switch?
Please?
Well, but I think we need Chris to suck, because it doesn't work if he doesn't suck.
Okay.
This bad, though?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
they're really taking advantage of the situation.
but make him suck. Chris then returns fire with the same insult, which results in a back and forth about fornication and who would enjoy it more until JC puts a stop to it. Chris finally apologizes for being an asshole, and JC tells him that if he wasn't such an asshole, even girls might like him. Chris mockingly chuckles, asking JC to toss him his pillow. JC obliges, and as soon as he catches it, he throws it back playfully at JC, and we fade out from the impromptu pillow fight.
Nothing like a casual pillow fight after we just unfroze a mystery cryogenic man for some reason. Like, I know that clearly in their friendship they needed to have some words, but like, we've got bigger fish to fry.
well,
They just go on as if what happened never happened.
yeah. Well, to them it didn't.
I guess, but
We're moving on
Yeah.
right now.
to my mind, I'm like, that scientist saw us. He's going to tell the dean
Yes.
or whatever.
You would think.
But we fade into a serene scene on a distant Hawaiian beach. In a POV shot, a mixed drink in a coconut is placed in front of us, and the camera cuts to find Ray Cameron, played by Tom Atkins, sitting on the beach in a fancy white suit and sunglasses.
It's the man, the myth, the legend.
I mean,
Absolutely. I was like, if it ain't Tom Titty Sucking Atkins.
yeah, he did it.
That's his full name.
It is, yeah, legally. This is such a perfect introduction to him too.
Yeah.
Sitting on the like it's I was like, of course there he is.
And I will say, the kind of film that we had, this was not strange at all to me.
Not at
No.
all.
I was like, oh, so he's some super famous PI or something. We'll figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Ray casually takes the drink served to him by a woman in a bikini, and as several beachgoers pass him by, he notices something out in the water. It's Pam, looking just as she did in 1959, rising up from the depths of the ocean. As she ascends, we see that her hair is completely dry, and she's wearing a shimmering gold-colored dress with a light purple waistband and a matching corsage. I just want to say this gets even sadder because this is clearly a prom dress.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, these are just elements.
Uh-huh.
But Ray peers around the passers-by to get a better look, only to watch Pam turn to walk away through the water. He rises to his feet, ripping off his sunglasses, but as he stands, he finds himself now in his police uniform on that pitch-black night in 1959 on Route 66 West in full color. Ray wears a boutonniere matching Pam's corsage, and it's pinned to the front of his police uniform as he inches forward towards Johnny's parked car, watching in horror as the escaped patient raises his axe, only to bring it back down in a wet crunch, only to raise it again and bring it down again and again. Blood pours down the driver's side door of the car, and we see that Ray is holding Pam's severed hand. The escaped patient continues his work, Pam's severed leg resting on the road next to him, and when we cut back to Ray, he's now holding a shotgun, and we hear his heartbeat pumping in his ears. He racks the shotgun, aiming down sight and announcing, "Freeze!" The escaped patient turns to face Ray, his hair thin and in disarray, his face ghoulish and gaunt, and his haunted eyes staring directly at Ray. But we find Ray fast asleep in his chair in his living room, the camera rushing toward him as he awakens to the sound of his telephone ringing. Jazz plays lowly in the background as Ray collects himself, swiftly answering the telephone on its second ring with the iconic greeting, "Thrill me."
I'm filled with glee each time he says it. Like it's the first time he says it. It's so fucking good.
And it's funny, whenever we had announced that we were covering this on Patreon, people were just like, "Thrill me, thrill me." And I'm like, I don't know what
Like,
that
what does
means.
that mean?
But it's a great line, and it's, again, so quotable.
Yes.
We got to talk about that nightmare, though.
Yeah, that was really, really cool. And everything I felt like was done from him waking up, the way that the scenery changes. We go from one thing to the next. His clothes change, something else happens. I was like, that's really fucking cool.
Mm-hmm. I just love that it's bringing in all of these elements.
Yeah.
And it's bringing in all his history, all of these memories.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts so deceptively calm.
Right. But I think it's just the book he's reading.
When he wakes up.
Yeah. When we get into his dream, that's what he was reading. And then it's blending with his nightmares and it's taking him back to where he was.
That's really cool.
So good.
Yeah.
I know that Tom Atkins had said that his entrance is one of the best entrances he had ever read in a script. For me, I think it's the scariest part in the whole movie.
Oh, yeah. There's, I think, and as well, the moment in 1959 whenever the patient is walking towards Pam.
Yeah.
That's really scary.
Yeah.
It's like they're really keeping just this area where like real horror
Yes.
works.
Yeah.
And just the surreal of what he's holding and then what he's not holding. And it is excellent for me.
Mm-hmm.
Dekker had said that whenever you make your first film, you want to do everything because you don't know if you'll get to make another one.
Fair.
Okay.
And so this nightmare sequence kind of feeds into that. He put in some homages to Spielberg with the way that Pam rises from the ocean.
Okay.
He used some interesting camera techniques of like reversing her movement and kind of playing it a little slower. He just really tried to make this as memorable as possible. And I feel like you said it is probably one of the most effective parts of the entire film.
Yes. I did want to talk about Tom Atkins for a minute.
Of course.
I saw on that making of, he was talking about how Creepshow gave him the horror bug. And once he did Creepshow, he was like, I want to be the next Vincent Price. So that's when he actively started going out for horror roles. It was funny to me. He said there are at least 6 million people who come out for just about every horror film. And I don't see anything wrong with having them see me and at least some of them.
Hey, dude,
Yeah.
I thought that was so funny. But he had made it clear that he was interested in doing more horror. And he said when he got this script, when it was sent to him, he read the title and said, what is this shit? And then he read it and thought it was the funniest and scariest thing that he had read in a really long time. So he met with Dekker and he signed on. And a lot of it, like I said, was just being in love with that entrance.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really cool listening to like this younger cast that he's working with talk about him. Even Steve Marshall had said that working with Tom Atkins showed him what it was like to be a real actor. He said it. He never complained. He was polite to everybody. He was on time. He worked hard. He was funny. Just like everybody just had a glowing endorsement. Like nobody had but not that they would in like a fucking, like, he was actually a dick. But like you could tell the way that they were talking about him. It was like they just had so much love and respect for him.
There is so much of this character that works specifically because Tom Atkins is playing him.
Yeah.
Like even the line "thrill me."
Yes.
Like there is an inherent coolness about Tom Atkins.
Yeah.
That makes it okay.
He said that he was like, I have great one-liners. He was like, I have great nicknames for the other characters. I get to drive around LA in this really cool car. He said that people ask him all the time, what's your favorite movie you ever made? And he says when people ask him that, he tells them Night of the Creeps.
That's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
I just thought that was so cool.
But on the other end of the phone is Sergeant Reneé, played by Bruce Solomon.
Come on.
But he asks if he's speaking to Detective Cameron, and Ray quips that it's actually Bozo the Clown. But we find Reneé at the station, breezing right past that, to tell Ray that they've gotten a call in from the University Med Center. Some experimental lab has been broken into. So this is what I was speaking of in the intro.
Mm-hmm.
In the background, one of the cops is played by Shane Black in a cameo role. I forgot to mention he co-wrote the film The Monster Squad.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
With Fred Dekker.
Okay.
And I think that they also co-wrote Shane Black's Predator film.
Oh.
All right.
But we cut to the lab, which is now filled with crime scene personnel dusting for prints and collecting evidence. A crime scene photographer snaps a photo of the young scientist who lies dead on the floor in a half-zipped-up body bag.
Was anybody else very surprised to see him dead?
Yeah.
I think because, we saw what happens when a slug... Or no, we haven't yet. We see that they just enter your mouth.
Yeah.
And then that's it.
And then you get frozen for...
off screen. But yeah, I kind of assumed it was going to be like from the offset, more of like a zombie situation immediately.
Right.
Yeah.
But irksome cop at crime scene, played by Craig Schaefer, greets Ray by name as he arrives. Standing silhouetted in the door frame, Ray opens his badge, quipping that no, he's Bullwinkle Moose. The man has one joke.
Yeah.
But he steps forward, announcing to whichever cop is in the know, "Thrill me." From the crowd of cops steps Detective Landis, played by Wally Taylor.
Landis.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What do you got, JP?
So Wally Taylor, I did recognize him, but I recognized him from Rocky 3.
Really?
And he did that in 82. He did The Golden Child in 86. When a Stranger Calls in 79.
Oh.
And Escape from New York in 81.
With Tom Atkins.
That's right.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Landis tells Ray that he's looking at an actual cryogenics lab, sharing that they had some kid's body here on ice since 1959. So nobody knew about it, I guess.
That's what I'm saying. What the hell is going on in here?
Something not bad.
Yeah.
In disbelief, Ray asks if this is homicide or a bad B movie.
No.
But he walks over to the young scientist's corpse, hilariously asking, "What's that?" As he puts a stick of gum into his mouth, Landis explains that it was a grad student, a lab technician who was scheduled to work this evening. Ray comments that he appears to have worked too hard, before sarcastically supposing that Rip Van Winkle must be the other body, asking where it is.
He's quick.
Yeah.
You got to give him that.
The man's a character. But the irksome cop steps forward, revealing that the other body isn't here. As he walks off, Ray smokes his cigarette, agitatedly asking what the cop means by that. The coroner, played by Vic Palitzos, walks by with his mouth full of sandwich because he's a coroner at a crime scene.
Yeah.
I got so much enjoyment out of this cliche being used over and over and over.
Vic Palizos. I recognize his face. It took me a little bit into the movie to recognize him. I recognized him from Harlem Nights in '89.
Okay.
Yeah. But he also did Eraser in '96, 187 in '97, and Superhero Movie in '08.
Character actors, man.
Yeah.
But Ray stops him, asking if he's already transported the body. But annoyed, the coroner responds that he just got here and walks away. Puzzled at the fact that he was told there would be 2 bodies here, Ray reconvenes with Raimi. After telling Raimi to knock off the yes sir shit when Raimi addresses him this way, Ray asks him what a desk sergeant is doing out here on a call anyway. And before Raimi can answer, Ray then asks him if he knows the difference between 2 bodies and 1 body, acknowledging that it wasn't on the sergeant's exam or anything, but he assures Raimi that if he uses his little fingers to count, it's actually quite easy. He even lifts Raimi's hand to help him count it, and after muttering a quick, "Yes, sir," under his breath, Raimi explains that there were 2 bodies, but there was a dispatch problem.
What the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
We'll learn. Not really.
No. At this point, I was like, is this a cover-up?
Yeah.
Because Ray asks the irksome cop for clarification, and he just repeats, "There was a dispatch problem, sir."
That makes that tells me nothing.
Yeah.
Raimi continues that he came down here and met the night janitor. Ray asks if he got a statement from him, and Raimi's silence and excusal of the irksome cop from the conversation is all the answer that Ray needs. Ray tells Raimi that this shit is getting old really fast, confessing that he was awakened out of a real pleasant dream to come down here, and asks Raimi if he's going to sort it out or is he going to have to play Poo Patrol with Raimi's nightstick. First of all, that dream was anything but pleasant.
No, yeah.
And we will be reporting this man to HR. But Raimi takes the blame, admitting that he screwed up sending 2 rookies down here, and at some point, they both went to the bathroom. Irritated, Ray says that that's all fine, but there's just one problem. Corpses that have been dead for 27 years do not get up and go for a walk by themselves. But somewhere, in the dark of night, with the sound of college students nearby, we watch as Johnny's cold, dead feet step nakedly across the asphalt of the street, marching like a zombie. But in his red convertible, Brad parks on the curb in front of the Kappa Delta sorority house in the exact same place that Johnny parked 27 years ago, and it looks like the same shot, too.
Oh, I love that.
But Brad apologizes to Cynthia, who sits in the passenger seat, for having to make it an early night, but he says that they have some serious pledge humiliation to deal with. He then gives his girlfriend a kiss on the cheek, and Cynthia reluctantly returns this affection before getting out of the car. Brad speeds away, his license plate, Bradster, illuminated as he makes his way down the road. I don't know if you saw what the license plate frame said. It just flat out said, "Being perfect."
Shut up.
I was too like the Bradster.
That's
Yeah.
all. I was stuck on that.
It's like, all right, we got it.
Yeah.
Two Brad is, I guess.
I was just gonna say, oh, how attractive. Some pledge humiliation. I'd just be like,
Yeah.
I can't. I have to get out of this car. Like, Please don't ever look me in the eye again.
And it makes you think, like you said, you're like, who is Cynthia, man?
Yes.
Yeah.
And with the speed at which Chris fell in love with her, we really don't get to know her at all.
Because she's
No.
being perfect.
But Cynthia watches as his car disappears and she heads inside of the sorority house. But there, in the street, we see Johnny once again dragging his feet as he continues his march. Inside the sorority house, Cynthia walks past a chatting couple next to the front door, looking down the hall to find the disapproving face of the house mother, played by Evelyn Smith, leaning out of a door frame. I did hear on commentary that there was a part of the sequence from the 1950s that was cut, and it featured the house mother played by the same actress at the same age, and so it was like a running joke that she has looked exactly the same
That's
before.
fucking hilarious.
But they cut it out for some reason.
That would have been kind
Yes.
of funny.
Yeah. But as Cynthia heads upstairs, a sorority girl that I could not find a credit for stops her. Carrying a box filled with several sealed jars, she asks Cynthia, who is apparently the president of the sorority, if she can store the jars in the house until Monday. Cynthia asks what they are, and the girl reluctantly says that they're kind of brains for her bio class, and they have to dissect them. This gives Cynthia pause as she asks if they're human brains. The girl then amends her request, asking if she can just store them in the basement. Cynthia gives her permission, saying that she just doesn't want them up here in the house.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Logically, there's no...
No, it's ridiculous.
I kind of thought that this would have like the brains. I'm like, what is
Yeah.
what's that for?
And honestly, it is one of those things where this movie throws so much at you that you're like, I don't even think about this at all anymore until we have to.
No,
Yeah.
honestly, I forgot about this, and I forgot about those ugly little aliens from the beginning.
But Cynthia makes her way to her bedroom, closing the door behind her and resting her head against it. As Johnny continues onward through the grass outside, Cynthia undresses in her room. We cut to Karen, played by June Harris, who sits down on the couch in the common area with a cup of tea. She snags a textbook, returning to her place in it as she puts on her large reading glasses to continue her homework. The camera alternates between shots of her and a shot of a large patio door at the other end of the room, covered in a thin white curtain. Tense music rises as the sound of tapping is heard suddenly on the glass of the door. Karen takes off her glasses, standing up to make her way over there cautiously. Her hand gripping the handle, she slowly twists the door open, and out of the darkness, a black cat leaps up, its meow echoing as Karen catches it. She greets the sweet cat, calling him Gordon and asking him where he's been and if he's here to help her study. So the name Gordon is apparently a reference to Gordon Carroll. He's a producer that produced the Alien franchise.
Okay.
And I guess he also happened to be Dekker's mentor, he said.
Oh, wow.
Very nice.
Well, it's very fitting for him to name him after the best character in the movie.
I mean.
Or name the best character after him, because new favorite character just dropped.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we'll spend a little more time with this cat. But the synth hums lowly as outside, Johnny continues through the dirt and toward the exterior steps of a fire escape just outside of the sorority house. In her bedroom, the camera pans to find Cynthia taking off her bra and putting on a nightgown as she turns around. As soon as it's on properly, she hears something small hit the glass of her bedroom window. She creeps over, pulling the curtain open to find nothing. Of course, I was like, oh, they're redoing what happened at the beginning. I thought he was going to be stuck on a loop in his zombie brain, and he's like throwing little rocks.
Oh, okay.
Nah.
Yeah, no.
But a breeze blows open the curtains of an adjacent window, which catches her attention. She walks over to it, and as the music rises ominously, she reaches outward to pull the curtains apart, and as soon as she does, she finds nothing. But after a beat, Johnny lurches forward out of nowhere, pressing his blue face against the glass with a sinister grin. Cynthia watches fearfully as his forehead splits open, dark slugs raining from it, down the fire escape and into the grass below, wriggling wildly through the grass and into an opening in the wall at the bottom of the sorority house.
Couple things here.
Mm-hmm.
Firstly, I love how he looked. He looked great. Secondly, I literally paused it because I was like, when he lunges out, is he presenting a flower?
Was he?
He
it
absolutely
like
no. He is.
Okay.
Because I went back and I paused it. He lurches forward and he's holding a flower. She like screams, and then when you see him again, it's just nowhere to be seen.
This flower?
Yeah. It's red.
I'm very confused.
Yeah, I have no idea. And I thought maybe it's like what you were saying, where we're like stuck in this loop and he thinks that he's taking her out on a date or whatever, but it is quickly abandoned. And then there's slugs.
Yeah. Well, do you think that he did throw the rocks and then he ran his ass up the fire escape and then he tried to, maybe it's a cut thing.
I don't know.
Like maybe the creeps let you hold on to something. Like, no, never mind. It's just,
get out of here.
Yeah.
It is funny that you said that because I noticed it, but I was just like, because it does look funny because he does it and it happens. And when they do cut to her and come back, he's not like that anymore. So I was just like,
I
whatever.
felt gaslit. I was like, I know I saw a fucking flower.
And he's very happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he is.
For whatever's happening inside.
I also saw on that making of, I think it was David B. Miller that was talking about it. They had so many of these little slugs that they used. Some of them in like rigs and stuff for things that we'll see later on.
Uh-huh.
But there's a lot of crawling across stuff or like across, you know. He said literally for a lot of them, they glued cars to the bottom of them and just pushed them or like just had them go, and it works great.
Yeah.
He said if it's a smooth surface, they could easily do that. If it was in the grass, they literally just tied a line to it and pulled it along the grass.
That's amazing. Just as simple as can be.
So simple, but it totally gets the job done.
And it looks cool.
Yes.
But several police cars and an ambulance arrive on the scene, cops rushing from their vehicles toward the sorority house. They pass Ray as he pulls up in a vintage 1950 Ford Deluxe outfitted as a squad car. So this is the cool car.
Yeah.
But on his walk toward the front entrance, Ray literally stops to smell the roses outside as paramedics rush past him carrying a spine board. Two things. One, remember this rose.
Okay.
And two, this was all Tom Atkins' idea. Just a character moment.
I love that.
Yeah.
But the coroner rests casually on the front steps in front of a body covered in a blood-stained sheet. Surrounded by cops and members of the sorority, he chews another bite of food, peeking under the sheet and acknowledging that it's a Caucasian male with unusual pallor to his complexion. At least what's left of it. He looks up at Ray, asking if this is the body that he was looking for. Ray simply replies, "Thrill me." And the coroner does just that, unveiling the body beneath the sheet. Johnny's face has been split open down the middle, cracked perfectly in half, all the way through his skull. Sorority sisters are heard crying in the background. Yes, the coroner lifted the sheet in front of the public.
Well, you know, he wanted to be thrilled. So
Him.
Thrill everyone. Thrill us all.
thrill us.
Thrill house. But Ray turns away, muttering, "Jesus Christ," as sirens wail in the distance.
Talk about a splitting headache, am I right?
I mean, yeah, that's about right. You are correct. But Ray makes his way around back of the sorority house, walking on a path towards a structure that rests behind it. He passes a couple, the boyfriend played by Todd Bryant and the girlfriend who I couldn't find a credit for, and he asks what this structure is supposed to be. The boyfriend replies that it's supposed to be the house mother's cottage before scramming with his date. It's like, you don't gotta be a dick.
No, who the fuck do you think you're talking to?
Tom, he's lucky, dude.
Yeah.
And I did look up because, finding the names for all these cast members.
Mm-hmm.
Todd Bryant has done a ton of stunt work, and he just has this like little tiny role.
Yeah.
But he did stunt work in Edward Scissorhands, Men in Black, The Matrix, like a ton of
God
stuff.
damn.
And I was like, that's just very interesting.
Yeah.
But the camera arcs around Ray as he smokes his cigarette, haunted by a memory. In black and white, we see a shovel stabbing into the dirt, a body quickly wrapped in a plastic sheet for burial. But back in the present day and in full color, Detective Landis appears, smacking his hand onto Ray's shoulder, asking him what he's thinking and telling him to knock it off. Ray chokes out a question, asking if what happened to that body looked like it could have been done with an axe. Landis politely tells him to stop it, reminding him that that psycho disappeared 27 years ago and he knows it. With a smirk, Landis asks Ray if he gets off on living in the past. I do feel like there's like 4 movies going on.
Yeah.
Like this detective story of this haunted man.
Yeah.
Who, I mean, honestly, that's a pretty cool story too, to think about like the return of this ghost,
Yeah.
like murderer or whatever.
Right.
And I guess what he thinks is possibly happening at this moment anyway.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
It is.
It's not what happens or anything, but
I was thinking of a way to say
Yeah.
that.
It's like, hold on a second.
don't get your hopes up.
Yeah.
But I do like this little tease of something more and something that he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because as we're watching it, you think about his nightmare and you're just like, oh, you know, obviously he's mourning the loss of his former love.
Yeah.
But then you realize that it's much more than that, too.
Yes.
And we do return to it in an interesting way. I just feel like right now, Ray Cameron is living in a different film.
Oh, yeah.
But back out front, after snapping a few more photos of the corpse, the body is zipped up for transport. Cop outside sorority, played by Tom Donaldson, tells the gathered college students to stay back because they don't want to see this. Like, they've already seen everything.
Yeah.
But the camera pans across the group of young faces to find Cynthia, with her head resting against one of the pillars on the porch, her mind off somewhere, reliving the horror of the night. But the next morning, a college student holds a copy of the Corman Clarion newspaper, a headline on the front page reading, "Headless Corpse Found in Front of Kappa Delta." He folds it up, and behind it, we see Chris and JC exiting one of the academic buildings on campus. Chris expresses disbelief as JC tries to tell him that there was a blonde in their class wearing a blue sweater that was checking him out. Chris is taken. He doesn't care about that.
Yeah, in his mind, yes.
But the boys stop dead in their tracks when they're flanked by a quartet of beta fraternity brothers. When they turn to walk in the other direction, they find Brad standing there with another fraternity brother. Or, according to Reneé, a fraternity father.
Yes.
Brad puts it plainly. That was not too cool, bros. JC tries to explain, but Brad continues, telling them that, yeah, they put them up to it, but they said the Phi Omega Gamma house, not the Kappa Delta sorority.
So he thinks that they did that to that body, and his issue is that they dropped it off at the wrong house?
Yeah, everything else is fine.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
come the fuck on, dude.
I didn't even think about that.
That's ridiculous.
He asks if they know the difference, and Chris responds that it's all Greek to him, which inspires a chuckle from JC. But Brad isn't laughing, chiding that a lot of girls were freaked out last night because of them.
Well, it wasn't their fault that the coroner really showed that.
Yeah, not into the kindergarten.
That really had nothing to do with them.
No. But JC cuts him off, calling him Brother Bratskeller, and reminding him that not only was the whole stunt Brad's Nobel Prize-winning idea, but the two of them didn't even pull it off. We see Cynthia standing amongst the gathered crowd, a look of surprise registering on her face. JC tells Brad to get off their case and go practice goose-stepping or something. He stares Brad down as he walks past him, but before he can get too far, Brad kicks JC's crutches from under him, causing him to tumble to the concrete.
We're probably going to get jumped, but I would punch that dude in his mouth.
Yes,
You
yeah.
trip my buddy like that,
It would be worth it.
Yes. I was like, really? Now that's too much.
I mean,
Even for him, and this dude is an established asshole.
Yeah.
Cynthia screams for Brad to stop, and Chris rushes to check on JC and help him up. Brad just shrugs, telling them, "Sorry, dorks," and to not take it personal. He turns to Cynthia, asking if she's coming with, but Cynthia just raises her fist, winding it like a jack-in-the-box, slowly unveiling her middle finger. The crowd applauds. I wouldn't believe it if I wasn't there. But
They loved it.
Yeah.
there is something really, really funny that's happening in the distant background.
Mm-hmm.
There's one of the first ADs. She is waving students out of the way to get out of the shot, but she herself is the only one who ends up in the shot.
Oh, my God.
Like waving wildly. It's really funny.
She's trying to do her job, man.
But as the frat boys leave, Cynthia walks over to Chris and JC, who is helped to his feet and given his crutches back. Cynthia apologizes for Brad's behavior, but JC tells her that it isn't her fault. Chris repeats that they didn't do what Brad is accusing them of, and Cynthia believes them. But after a moment, JC finally makes the proper introduction for Chris, telling him that this is Cynthia Cronenberg. And again, before the introduction, I'm just watching this chemistry between Cynthia and JC.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Chris just stands there like like he's not even here.
Yeah.
And he doesn't need to be here.
No. Let's be very clear about that.
There's also something very interesting that we see. I don't know if I know. Well, no, I know I didn't notice it the first time.
Mm-hmm.
It was pointed out on commentary, but whenever he is helped up and he's on his crutches, JC has a tape recorder that he presses stop on. And this is supposed to be a subplot that comes up in the next scene, but for some reason they didn't use it.
Huh.
I'll explain it later. The tape recorder does become very important later,
Yeah.
but it was supposed to become important like in a couple of minutes.
Okay, because I was telling your sister, we were talking about it earlier, and I was like, I don't know what that has to do with anything. He pulls it because you do.
Yeah.
You see him. It's like the Home Alone thing that he had in Home Alone.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, he's got one of those tape recorder things. And then it does later on, but
now they're like, so anyway.
yeah,
It's like,
it just kind of
okay.
goes past it.
Yeah.
He fell. He's like, is this thing okay?
Cynthia smiles sweetly at Chris, but before JC can introduce himself and Chris to Cynthia, someone else calls their names. Christopher Romero and James Carpenter Hooper. And we cut to Detective Landis as he introduces himself as a homicide detective, flashing his badge. In the next scene, we find Chris and JC in an interrogation room, sitting at a table under a bright light with Detective Landis. Ray enters the room with a folder, slapping it down on the table and referring to the boys as Spanky and Alfalfa. He directs their attention to the fifth man sitting at the table, Mr. Miner, played by Robert Kino, a reference to Steve Miner.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't even catch that till I watched it the second time, and I was
Yeah.
like, Miner!
But Ray asks if either of them recognize Mr. Miner. When the boys don't answer, Ray tells them that Miner recognizes them. As it turns out, he's the night janitor at the University Med Center, and he saw them running out of the building last night at 40 miles an hour, screaming like banshees. He lights his cigarette, asking if they care to comment. But when they don't say a word, Ray adds that they also found a headless body outside of the Kappa Delta house last night. Chris raises his head in fear and shock as Ray stands up, continuing that it was a body that came from the lab and basement of that very medical center that Mr. Miner saw them running out of at 40 miles an hour. JC reminds Ray not to forget the screaming like banshees part, but Ray breezes past that, saying that it sounds like some kind of pledge prank to him, a sick, twisted, psychotic, demented, deranged pledge prank, but still possibly in the ballpark of what some might call collegiate tomfoolery. This is way out of the ballpark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, he's being too kind.
But it's an interrogation. You just got to get him to admit it.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Just like, I get it, guys. Sometimes I want to steal bodies and peel their heads open too.
But the thing is that while Ray's doing this, Chris is like,
yeah.
I think that's all you
No,
need.
yeah, there's no use in denying it.
But Ray asks once again if they care to comment, and JC does the talking, assuring the detective that they're not really the fraternity type, adding that he would personally rather have his brains invaded by creatures from space than pledge to a fraternity. So some bad's going to happen.
Yes.
But Chris immediately sells them both out, telling Ray that JC is lying. They did it. Chris says the betas put them up to it, and Ray chortles that explains everything. Chris then explains what happened. The betas told them to find a body and dump it on the steps of another fraternity. But they got to the lab and got it out of this thing, and then they chickened out and ran away. JC adds, at 40 miles an hour, and Mr. Minor grins, screaming like banshees. Everybody's having fun. But JC tries to excuse it as a nervous response, and Chris uses these words to explain how the body twitched and how its eyes opened. But Chris swears to God that they didn't move the body from the laboratory or damage it in any way. He says that if they did, Mr. Minor would have seen that too. But Mr. Minor just shakes his head, repeating, screaming like banshees, as Ray walks over to a window, pensively smoking his cigarette. So the point of the tape recorder is JC recorded Brad confessing to everything.
Okay.
And that's how they get out of the station. Because he plays it for Ray.
Why
Yeah.
would they cut that out?
I have no
Oh,
idea.
maybe because they still need Brad out and about later.
Oh, yeah.
Like, wouldn't he be in trouble?
Oh,
that's true.
right.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Well, it's, collegiate tomfoolery.
You know?
But on the cool, even that, Tim telling him the truth, yeah, they went in there and they pushed some buttons. They don't have to say that they moved the body. They just
No.
look, the dude fell out, so we took off screaming. And if we would have had him, like he said, he would have seen us carrying him. We didn't
Yep.
have him, so he got walked on his own.
Yeah.
You can't keep us here, copper.
Yeah. No.
But at the morgue, the coroner gets to work, scribbling paperwork as the young scientist's body rests behind him on the table. The sound of snoring startles the coroner, who looks back at the body for a moment before returning to his work. But unbeknownst to him, the corpse of the young scientist lurches up, a pair of scissors clamped at his split-open neck, a trail of blood streaked down his naked chest. He shuffles through the halls of the station, passing a cop played by J. Arlen Jones, who doesn't even look up at him, merely acknowledging his presence with a, "See you tomorrow."
This reminded me so much of Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
When he's going to the shops and the zombies are one, but he's just so like consumed with his day-to-day bullshit that he doesn't even notice. This was very much that for me. There's a couple moments in this film that remind me of films that come after it. And so I really wonder how much this influenced.
When you think about Edgar Wright, it seems like a movie that he would love.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I wouldn't be surprised at all. But that's interesting. But the scientist continues down the hall, and we crossfade to the night sky, a full moon resting high within it. We cut to Mr. Minor mopping the floors of the University Med Center, chuckling to himself, still tickled over, screaming like banshees. But as he rounds the corner, the young scientist lurches around it to meet him, and Mr. Minor can't help but scream like a banshee himself.
See, that's why we were screaming that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This really bummed me out though, because
Yeah.
I thought he was really funny.
Yeah.
And he was having fun
Yeah.
at work, which is really rare.
Yes.
But we cut to the outside of the Kappa Delta sorority house, the camera dipping down to just underneath the manicured bushes lining the sidewalk outside. Suddenly, several alien slugs whip by quickly, scuttling through the grass toward the front door of the house. But inside, the phone rings and Karen answers it. A masculine voice on the other end asks if Cindy Cronenberg is there, and Karen calls out for her. But two sorority sisters, Kathy, played by Liz Kern, and the other sorority sister that I couldn't find a credit for, sit on the couch together nearby, Kathy asking if anyone has told Karen about the cat yet. The other sister says that it would break Karen's heart. Mine too.
Yes.
I do want to say they credited this sorority sister as someone who shows up later in the film on IMDb, and I disagree with IMDb. I don't think that's right.
Well, you showed us and they look like two completely different people.
Yeah.
They're both blonde,
That's crazy.
but that's it.
But Cynthia answers the phone, and from his bar inside the Beta frat house, the caller is revealed to be, as he puts it, the Bradster. Just being perfect. Cynthia says that she doesn't want to talk to him, and Brad tells her to calm down, asking if it's about those chuckleheads from earlier. Cynthia tells him that it would be one thing if he was intending to pledge them, but Brad interrupts, telling her to have a cow about it. He says that if he knew she was going to pull a downer like this, he never would have told her. But he adds that that's what he gets for going with a fucking psych major, isn't it?
So long and good night. So long and good night.
That was a lot.
Yeah.
Come on, dude.
He's like, hello?
Yeah.
And I will say, like, again, it's pretty rough for Cynthia. She's like, you can beat the shit out of him as long but since you're
Punch him
not.
after.
Cynthia does immediately hang up on him, which gets the attention of Karen, who's returned to her studying couch, putting on her glasses. As she returns to her work, she's interrupted suddenly by rattling at the patio door. She opens it, just as she did the night before, and Gordon the cat leaps into her arms. She greets him warmly, looking him over as he meows at her, but her face is filled with fright when she observes him properly. We see the poor cat, whose face is a ragged mess, a worm crawling through the red, gaping sockets that were once his eyes. She screams as his jaw opens, a low hiss emanating and accompanied by a musical sting in the score. Yeah.
Take your ass outside, Gordon. No.
I know.
Don't do that in here.
Yeah, go clean yourself out there and you can come back.
You're an outside cat now. I will say there is a quiet moment of a bit of like a seed being planted, no pun intended, because it really is, that I think comes to roost later.
Yeah.
Which is honestly kind of surprising because the gestation process takes a very long, depending on who you are.
Yeah.
Depending, yeah.
But we return to Ray, who sits at his desk at home, reviewing crime scene photographs from the night that Pam was murdered. Jazz music plays in the background as he smokes his cigarette and downs his last sip of whiskey. The telephone rings, and as he goes to answer it, we see a photo in his opened yearbook, a young Ray in his football uniform standing next to Pam, the head cheerleader. Ray lifts the phone from the receiver, asking, "Thrill me." We immediately cut to Ray standing above a corpse at the bottom of the stairs of the basement of the University Med Center. Detective Landis is there too, flanked by 2 other officers. The top of the corpse's head appears to have been busted open, and as Ray smokes a cigarette, he sums it up with one sarcastic word: wonderful. But we watch as alien slugs skitter across the floor, unbeknownst to the men who survey the body laying prone and dead.
So this is just the leech's thing, to crack the head open and escape.
Yeah, they use you, they abuse you. Like, that's just crazy. They get in, they have their fill, and then they're like, all right, next.
Yeah. Bye.
Yeah. And honestly, Mr. Minor barely had any time. They're like, we're bored. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But in their dorm room, Chris and JC sit back to back at their respective desks attempting to study. JC listens to his headphones, using his pins as drumsticks as he sings along to the music, annoying the shit out of Chris, who turns toward him slowly to finally say something. But Chris is interrupted by a knock at the door. He gets up to answer it, which JC notices, and standing there in the hallway is Cynthia, who looks up at him with a smile and a greeting. Chris attempts to return her greeting with a quavering voice as Cynthia explains that she looked them up in the student directory, hoping that they don't mind. Chris nervously says that they don't, and stammers his way towards finally asking if she wants to come inside. Cynthia instead asks if a walk would be out of the question, and we find the 3 of them walking together on the campus at night. Cynthia explains that she knows they buried Gordon. She saw the grave herself. JC quips with a laugh that this is excellent, Night of the Living Dead Cat. Chris gives JC a scolding look, but posits that maybe the girl who found the cat was just on drugs.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Did you think of that?
Yeah, how about you go back to not fucking talking to me?
This was a mistake, excuse me. As music echoes distantly, JC acknowledges a dance that the university is holding tonight at the student union. I thought that would matter more, but it really doesn't.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
But Cynthia asks Chris about the dead guy from the lab, telling them that he came to her window last night. She swears it.
I've been waiting for us to talk about this.
Yeah.
Because it's like we just fucking got over it very quickly.
Yeah.
But JC sarcastically makes some spooky sci-fi music with his mouth, Biz, but stops when Chris silently scolds him. Cynthia is annoyed, having thought that Chris and JC would understand. And honestly, why don't they?
Yeah.
I know that they're saying that grab from Johnny was just like a muscle spasm or something, but I feel like everything that's been happening so far, kind of wild.
There's too much for it to just be, oh, these are all just like separate weird things happen. Like,
yeah.
Put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah, I was a little confused too because I was like, you guys were cool the last time. Now you're making fun of me?
Yeah.
Like, what the hell?
But Cynthia says that she doesn't know who else to talk to about it. So Chris comforts her with his arm around her shoulder, which JC takes notice of, telling her that he understands. Cynthia is overcome with confusion, but Chris quietly celebrates this moment of physical contact with JC behind Cynthia's back. JC excuses himself to the restroom, giving Chris the privacy to go for it, even though he mutters to himself that Cynthia might be insane.
I mean, first of all, I didn't like him comforting her and being like, yeah, man, I'm touching her and shit. Like,
she's like, going through it.
Yeah. I'm like, I hate you. Like, you suck.
But just the two of them alone together, Cynthia asks Chris if she tells him something, will he promise to believe her? And when he promises this to her without hesitation, Cynthia reveals that she thinks it was a zombie. Chris can't hide his concern as Cynthia continues that its head exploded and things like slugs spilled out of it. Clearly not believing her in the slightest, Chris suggests that he just walk Cynthia home.
Very dismissive.
Yeah.
She is throwing a lot out, but it's all 1,000% true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, just listen to her for 5 minutes.
And why would, I mean, even if you didn't believe all of it, you, like you said a second ago, we just had that weird ass experience with the frozen dude.
Yes.
What makes you think that those two things can't be put together?
And has nobody heard about the young scientist?
Oh,
yeah.
Like, I understand if they don't know about certain things, but that was a murder on campus, it seems.
Yeah.
At the very least, they got something going on.
Oh, and the house in front of the sorority.
Yeah.
I mean, the body that was there in front of that.
They think, and again, they know about the body, but none of this, they don't care.
No.
There's something
And
suspicious going on.
The state of the body.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was like, everybody, look at this shit.
But we watch as inside the University Med Center, JC makes his way into the men's restroom. And as soon as the door closes behind him, the camera pans back to the hallway, where from the far end, Mr. Minor shuffles slowly across the tiles, his head tilted back, his mouth agape, and his eyes a vacant and milky white. Okay, so wait, I fucked up. Who is that body that was found at the bottom of the stairs then? Was it, it was the science man.
That they like...
That they were like, oh, well.
Looney Tunes past?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, dude, these slugs just,
No, yeah, they're... Mm-hmm.
They get like 24 hours.
Just like a little nosh, and then they're like, I'm done. Like, I'm good.
I've heard of a 24-hour bug, but this is...
Yeah.
These are 24-hour bugs. I am already extremely nervous.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very upset. It did make me laugh a little bit because I thought he was saying he was going to the bathroom, just like,
Yeah.
oh, let me go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Like,
Like,
to give
no,
him a bit.
I do
It's
have
like,
to shit.
Excuse me.
One other time, I guess.
Yes, my stomach is upset. And if we will be hanging out this evening, something has to change. But outside, Chris and Cynthia begin to walk away together, but stop momentarily when Cynthia remembers that JC isn't with them. Chris assumes that JC already went back to the dorms and urges Cynthia onward with him.
I wanted to be mad at him, but I really did. It really seems like he was bowing out to let them be alone.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, I guess, Chris.
It is very funny to me that Cynthia is the one that is concerned, though.
Right.
Again, like he's a shitty friend.
Yeah, he is.
He's like, look, he's doing me a solid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's really doing himself a solid. But that's another.
He's taking himself a solid. JC is the prize. Let's be
Yeah.
very clear. That's why she's like, wait, where's your friend though?
Yeah, I got to go back with you.
Damn.
But as they walk away, the camera dips down to the street, where a pair of dark slacks and black shoes step into the frame. But in the bathroom, however, JC is using his time wisely, adding to the graffiti on the wall of his bathroom stall, courteously in pencil, I will say.
Yeah.
After he finishes writing, the love beast was here, and he was in mid-thought. He hears someone enter the restroom. The person takes a few steps closer, and JC hears what sounds like the tearing of flesh, followed by high-pitched squeals and the sounds of wriggling movement. He grows uneasy as his shaky hand reaches for the stall door, and when he pulls it open, he finds the body of Mr. Miner lying prone on the floor, the top of his head split open in a jagged wound, a mess of blood, brain, and bone marring the white bathroom tiles. A small black slug skitters away as JC slams the door shut. He pulls his pants up without wiping, which
I was gonna ask.
I don't care what situation you're in.
Yeah, I
yeah.
feel like
No.
I've got to clean my. Let's just not.
It's priority.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll deal with the bugs later or whatever. Or whatever the fuck's going on up there.
Yeah. They can wait an extra minute.
They
Give
can't
me a
focus.
second.
They can't focus.
No. But as JC looks around the stall fearfully, he notices that just under the door, resting on the floor, is a matchbook holding a solitary, unstruck match. He cautiously reaches for it, but rips his hand back when a slug zips by, almost making contact with his fingertips.
Okay. Now I'm going to stretch really quick before this reach. But did this remind anybody of Dreamcatcher?
Hey! Yeah!
That's
Right?
right.
That's, yeah.
Okay. All right. Maybe it wasn't that much of a reach.
No. Well, no pun intended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aw.
We should cover that, though.
We really should.
Yeah.
But JC gasps, confused at what just rushed by so rapidly. But he steels himself, reaching once more for the matchbook, and with great urgency, snags it from the floor with his fearful fingers. He opens it swiftly, lighting the last match and setting the matchbook ablaze. As it burns brightly, JC lowers it back to the ground where he found it. And like a fly to sugar, a slug heads straight for it, colliding with the matchbook and is immediately engulfed by fire.
I was like, that worked perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was really quick.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I mean, like, it seems like in all of these B movies where there is a certain monster, there is the secret weapon that can get them.
Of
Yeah.
course.
Even in the Blob, it was cold. It's,
Yeah.
You know, it's really cool. And, I mean, well, fire worked for the thing.
Yeah. You know.
Just thinking about it.
Yeah.
And again, I feel like this is just more and more in the column of JC just being the coolest.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's doing everything.
Thinking quickly. He could have wiped.
Yeah.
Is my only critique.
Yeah.
Almost everything.
Almost everything.
JC retreats instinctively, but leans down slowly to peer through the crack in the door. There, on the tile, he finds the dead slug, a flame flickering atop its body as a white foam pours from its corpse. He can't believe his eyes, but before he even has a moment to process it, another slug whips across the floor and into the stall, finding a home in his loose pant leg. JC drops to the floor in a crawl, dragging himself to the other side of the room as several slugs zigzag across the ground. And in a POV shot, we see one slug moving its way towards JC in a straight shot.
My only note was, no, JC cannot die this early.
No. But, well, I thought it was a fake out. I hoped.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought the first time.
Devastated.
Mm-hmm.
Something interesting that is on the wall is kind of like an Easter egg. There's graffiti that says "Go Monster Squad,"
Mm-hmm.
which was
Okay.
That's funny.
yeah, Dekker's next film. But Chris and Cynthia make it back safely to the Kappa Delta sorority house, and romantic music sounds in the score as Cynthia puts her back to the front door, admitting that she feels stupid and that maybe she is going crazy. But she changes the subject, sharing with Chris that there will be a formal tomorrow night, and she asks if he'll be her date. Chris is pleasantly surprised at first, but he asks her, "What about Brad?" Cynthia just replies that Brad is an asshole, which Chris already knows, but when he tries to get clarification on whether she and Brad are still together, Cynthia just repeats, "Tomorrow night."
I consider myself something of a compartmentalization queen. The way that she's able to shift from, I'm pretty sure that there are zombies running around with slugs in their heads, to, so you want to take me to the dance tomorrow, is astounding. Even for me. I was like, girl, like you switched gears very quickly.
But as president of the Kappa Delta, she's probably put a lot of work into this. Maybe it is the priority. She's like, well, again, we'll deal with the bugs later.
Yeah, clearly. Wipe your ass, go on a date, dance.
There'll be time for the bugs. But she opens the door, bidding Chris a good night and promising him no more weird stuff. On cloud 9, Chris practically floats away from the front porch of the sorority, but he's brought back to earth when he bumps right into Ray. Removing the cigarette from his mouth, Ray recounts recent events in Chris's life. Zombies, exploding heads, creepy crawlies, and a date for the formal.
It's like, damn, you've been following us for a while.
He calls this classic Spanky. He's married to this nickname.
Yeah.
As he should be.
I will say they use these nicknames very playfully later, and Ray's not like, what? Oh, I said that? I don't remember saying that.
Yeah, I
Just
say a
one
lot of
time.
shit. Yeah.
But we cut to the coffee table of Ray's home, where he sets 2 glasses, pouring whiskey into one, which he hands to Chris, who sits across from him on the couch. Ray sits in his chair, asking Chris, still referring to him as Spanky, if he had a high school sweetheart. Chris only offers a maybe, as Ray pours himself a drink and settles into his chair. He asks Chris what happened to her, and Chris answers honestly. He blew it. She decided they never needed to talk again, and she went on with her life.
What did he do?
I don't know.
I kind of, I want the backstory, maybe because I already don't like him and I just want like to bask in it a little bit. But yeah, what did you do?
And apparently he's been like pretty wounded about it for a long time because JC's like, fuck you, dude.
Yeah.
So, but Chris wonders why Ray is asking, and Ray shares that he too had a high school sweetheart. Chris asks what happened to her, and Ray answers identically to Chris, that he blew it, and she decided they never needed to talk again. But Ray adds that he became a cop. He says that he was a rookie for about 2 weeks when he got a call. Highway Patrol saw a car on the side of the road. He downs his whiskey, continuing that they called it in, and Ray responded. It was a couple. The guy's body was in the woods about 20 yards from the car. His partner found him. But Ray, he found the girl. In the car, and on the road, and in the woods.
Delivery?
Yeah.
God damn.
Ray tells Chris that his high school sweetheart went on with her life, but Ray's, she got hacked up by a nutcase with an axe. But he adds that that's not the fun part, teasing that the fun part is what happened next. When Chris asks what it was, Ray prompts him to guess. Chris asks if the police found him, and Ray says that he's close. Ray found him. And he says that it wasn't what you'd call your routine police work either. A better label for it would be revenge. Ray shares that he tracked him down during his off hours, but he wasn't alone. He took his 12-gauge shotgun with him. Ray tracked him and found him, and when he found him, he leveled off his shotgun right in his chest. He then prompts Chris to guess what happened next. But Chris asks if Ray should be telling him any of this. Ray just answers, "Close. I pulled the trigger." His voice quavering with nerves, Chris comments that this is all real exciting and everything, but he's got midterms and...
I'd be like, are you going to kill me, Ray?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
I don't think you're supposed to be telling me this.
No.
But Ray continues, complete with the black and white flashbacks that we saw earlier outside of the sorority house. Ray says that he wrapped the man's body in plastic and buried him in a vacant lot. The lot right behind the Kappa Delta sorority house, which now rests underneath the house mother's cottage.
such a great reveal because
Yeah.
you understand his behavior earlier.
Yeah.
When he was like, what's that?
Chris tells Ray that he doesn't mean to be rude or anything, but outside of just wanting to confess a murder, he asks what the point of this story is. And Ray admits that that's exactly what he's trying to figure out. Tom Atkins gets he gets a lot of credit for being just cool as hell.
Mm-hmm.
I want more credit for these chops.
Yeah.
Because this monologue delivery, like you said, it is so perfect. Everything is paced so well. They talked about it on commentary, the way that it's shot, the back and forth of the camera, these flashbacks, everything that is kind of just giving you more and more into this character of Ray Cameron, I believe.
Yes. Well, while he was talking, I'm like, I'm at the edge of my seat and I saw this. I already know this part.
Yeah.
So he's saying the house is on top of where he buried it, right?
Yeah.
Well, just go in there and look around, man.
Clearly,
I
you
mean-
know, be like, Miss House Mother, may I?
Yeah. Sorry, I murdered a man 27 years
Yeah,
ago.
if I could just like take a peek,
Yeah.
like
Well,
under your floor real quick.
He told this student. I mean, he's
You know?
Yeah, seriously. But that night, the house mother sits alone in her cottage, watching a broadcast of Plan 9 from outer space on her television.
That's hilarious.
She fights sleep as she rests on the couch, and her dog lies in front of her on the floor. But suddenly, a knock is heard from outside, which gets the dog's attention, and alertness returns momentarily to the eyes of the house mother before they slowly close again. But the knocking continues outside, which prompts the dog to bark incessantly. But the source of the sound begins to shift, it seems, and the dog looks down, barking at the floorboards as he whimpers and backs away. The thudding continues until a wooden plank breaks away from the floor, and then another, and another. The camera presses in to see the sharp end of a fire axe smashing through the wooden floor from below. Change of angle, but maybe a reference to The Shining?
Okay.
Take a shot.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's funny because when he stepped out onto the road, my note was, here's Johnny. But I forgot that the kid's name was Johnny. So I was like, that doesn't make any fucking sense.
Like he's in the woods now.
Here's another Johnny.
The dog barks madly as the escaped patient from 1959 digs himself out of the hole he created in the floor, rising skeletal to face the house mother, who can do nothing but sit there in shock, her mouth agape in horror. The psycho zombie, as he's credited, raises his axe above his head, bringing it down into the face of the house mother, blood spattering against her television screen.
So upon resurrection, is there this return to,
Form?
yeah,
Where-
again, like Shaun of the Dead?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, now where was I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I was hacking and slashing and chopping that meat. You know?
And she could have got out. There was more than enough time.
I was like,
It's
ma'am.
like, is that floor really coming apart? Oh, I'll wait another minute.
We'll see. I was
Yeah.
Maybe
pretty
I'm
tired.
dreaming.
Yeah.
But the phone then rings at Ray's house, and he answers it with a rather aggressive, "Thrill me." But his eyes widen as the voice on the other end fills him in. He slams the phone to the receiver, snagging his badge and his coat, as well as his shotgun and a box of shells. Chris rises from the couch, but he's not invited to the shindig because we do not see him in the next scene. So you can get home from here, right? And he's just gone.
I did find it odd that he
Yeah.
brought him to his home.
And then he's like, whatever.
Yeah, figure it out.
But instead, we see Ray speeding down the road, sirens blaring and lights flashing in his vintage squad car. He radios in to dispatch, annoyed at the lack of the presence of backup, but as soon as they arrive, flanking him in front and behind, he simmers down a little bit. The police cars accelerate past Phil's Diner, the neon sign outside flickering high in the night, before finally reaching the Kappa Delta sorority house. I expected something about Phil's Diner.
Me too.
Nothing.
I wonder
Yeah.
if that was something that was cut because it was too. Look at this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's very cool looking.
It is.
Means nothing. And I didn't even get if Phil was a reference to anything.
Huh.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe you could fill me in on that.
Nah.
But Ray bounds out of his car, ordering the other officers to search the neighborhood before he makes his way behind the house into the front of the house mother's cottage. A cop tells Ray that the house mother had a dog, but it ran away as soon as they kicked the door in. but Ray pays him no mind as he walks towards the coroner through a crowd of people watching as the house mother is taken away on a stretcher in a body bag. Chewing a mouthful of food yet again, the coroner snarks that if they had a stretcher for every piece, they'd be here all night.
Lower your goddamn voice. Like, this dude is just like, hey, everybody, don't be shy, crowd around.
He laughs as he walks away, but Ray does not find the humor in it.
Or the appetite.
No.
Yeah.
But in the car that Ray sent off to search the neighborhood, the driver, played by Jack Lightsey, tells his partner, played by Robert Kerman, who beams a searchlight out of the passenger side window, to give it up. Very interestingly, Robert Kerman played the lead in Cannibal Holocaust.
Huh.
Okay.
But the partner says to continue on just a little bit more. Back at the crime scene, though, irksome cop at murder scene, played by Richard Sasson, returns to Ray, telling him that they've checked everywhere but haven't found anything. But Ray just pushes him off, ordering him to check somewhere else and not return until he finds something. But the patrol car continues on until the partner with his searchlight agrees that they should give it up. But as soon as they do, the psycho zombie lurches out of nowhere with his axe in hand, causing the driver to screech to an abrupt stop. The ghoul raises his axe, colliding only with the trunk of the car as the driver speeds away in fright. Ray exits the backyard, catching up with the irksome cop, who has once again come up empty. But he shares that officers Wallace and Teague are patrolling the area, while Dante and De Palma are on the other side.
That's so good,
Yeah.
man.
You got Tommy Lee Wallace, you got Louis Teague, Joe Dante, Brian De Palma. One line of dialogue.
That's so funny.
But they're interrupted by a girl standing near Ray's squad car, played by Dawn Gregg, who calls out to them. Through the radio in Ray's car, we hear the cops on patrol calling urgently for backup, and full of fury, Ray orders the irksome cop to get the 12-gauge out of his car for him. Now. We cut to the patrol car speeding down the road and into an alley, followed by Ray on foot, toting his shotgun, along with the irksome cop and Officer Bava, played by Elizabeth Alda.
Wow.
And she's Alan Alda's daughter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But once the psycho zombie reaches a dead end, the patrol car cops block him in and hop out of the vehicle. They all aim their guns as Ray hops a fence with his shotgun, aiming it at the ghoul, just as he did 27 years ago. Ray screams for him to freeze, which he does, and his voice shaky, he raises the shotgun to aim the barrel, muttering, "I already killed you, you son of a bitch. I already killed you."
Great line.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe like be a little bit quieter about that murder that you
Dude,
committed.
the other cops are like, what the fuck?
You did
We're
what?
going to have to talk about this later, I think.
Yeah. Right. Everybody's here, dude.
Yeah.
No statute.
No, not for murder.
But the psycho zombie turns around, and the officers fill him full of lead, light leaking through the holes that they've created. But the ghoul gazes eyelessly at Ray, his skeletal face stretching into an antagonistic smile. Ray stands in shock for a moment before blasting him, blowing his head clean off. There's this really cool moment in this scene where there's like a warp zoom, and it is completely inspired by Jaws.
Okay.
All right.
But his body collapses to the ground, and we see slugs slinking away from his corpse, past the officers who stand puzzled at what they've just witnessed.
We all seen this.
Yes.
We all see what's happening.
Yes.
No one can deny this now.
No.
But everyone forget what I said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please.
On that making of, they were talking about how they were able to do these slugs coming out of the heads like that. They were literally latex heads with the like mechanism for them to open.
Mm-hmm.
And they said that they had like a plunger stuffed full of the slugs and slime. And so when the heads opened, the pressure just shot them out.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I was like, that's so fucking cool.
Yeah.
But the next morning, Chris walks through the campus back to his dormitory, his outfit for the formal slung over his shoulder on a hanger in a dry cleaning bag. Coming out of the dormitory are a couple of dormies played by Chris Dekker, the director's brother,
Aww.
and Brian McGregor. Chris stops them, asking if any of them have seen JC since he didn't come home last night, but they just tell him that the last time they saw him, the two of them were leaving together with that babe.
I was annoyed that he disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't come home last night, and you're still out picking up a fucking suit for the dance. Like, I just feel like he's a shitty friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's really nothing redeeming about this dude.
No, I just don't like him.
Again, priorities, I guess.
Yeah, but you're right. After I made sure Cindy got home safe, I need to go find.
Where is he?
Yeah.
But they ask Chris what the tuxedo is for before smiling and walking away, leaving Chris worried over the whereabouts of his friend. Finally.
Yeah.
But that night, at the Kappa Delta sorority house, after watching a few slugs scuttle their way across the grounds, we're taken inside, where the girls are getting dressed and ready for the festivities. We pan across a few girls in the bathroom mirror applying makeup, a few half-dressed in the halls, and a couple of them soaping up in the shower. The montage continues at the Beta fraternity house, where the boys are getting ready too, washing up, getting changed, and horsing around. Meanwhile, the slugs are having their run of the campus, slipping through the grass undetected in search of a new host.
I loved this little montage. I thought it was so 80s.
Yeah.
And the way that it's cut with them getting ready at the sorority and then them getting ready at the fraternity. And then the slugs also, it was like the slugs are also getting ready.
We're preparing.
It's going to be a big night.
I will say I did hear on commentary this montage was shot as a favor by Steve Miner.
Oh, I love that.
All right.
He did some second unit directing work.
That's so good. He directed the greatest film of all time,
Yeah.
House.
This is, I guess it's better than the Giallo thing. But,
Well, you know.
but Chris gets ready as well, putting on his tuxedo and checking himself and his red carnation in the mirror. But when he glances over at JC's desk, full of paper and half-finished homework assignments, he finds a tape player underneath a note that simply reads, "Listen."
I'm pissed off.
I hope it's Jigsaw.
He was gone all night, all day, and now it's night again, and you're just now looking at his desk?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You've been a terrible friend. Hello, Chris. But Chris follows the instructions left for him, sitting down at JC's desk and pushing play on the cassette tape. JC's voice comes through the speaker, humorless and much deeper as he announces, "Chris, there's one inside of me. It got in through my mouth." He says he can feel it and that it's in his brain. The camera presses in on Chris as pensive keys sound in the score, and JC continues that he doesn't have a pulse or a heartbeat. He thinks he's dead. He explains that he killed one of the slugs. He lit a match to it, and he thinks that fire kills them. He then reveals that he's gone to the furnace room in the basement and repeats that if he doesn't come back, heat will kill them. He then shares to Chris's surprise, "I walked, Chris. All by myself, I walked." But after a brief pause, JC tells Chris that he loves him, and he wishes him luck with Cynthia. A high-pitched screech then emanates from the speaker, the last sound on the recorded tape.
I heard they don't like fire.
Very good.
No, I have to make a joke because I was so sad.
Oh, no, I know.
This was like shockingly heavy. I was genuinely upset by this. And the sound of his voice.
Yeah.
Mhm. I did read in Fangoria, and it's a quote that Fred Dekker said,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that he accomplishes it, but he said, "I'm attempting to make a stupid, low-budget horror movie that will hopefully have characters that people care about when they die." Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I feel like, there were other people that got the slug treatment
Yeah.
that or whatever, but JC,
No, this one hurt.
and there's one coming up that's like, man.
Yeah.
But I just feel like when you think of doing like a pastiche of B movies, you think of characters that are cool. You don't really think that you're going to care about them.
Yeah.
No, that's true.
And very interestingly, I did read a little, and I also heard on commentary, but there are a lot of critics who find queer subtext between JC and Chris. And also Fred Dekker said on commentary that he welcomes it.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that. And it just makes it sadder because JC can do so much fucking better.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing
He
that out
can,
there.
yeah.
Yes. But no, I can absolutely see that. And I don't know, just the way, the delivery of this message.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so upset.
And it's so out of character from the JC that we've heard.
Yes.
Where he's like, stop joking around. He's sternly serious.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh man. And again, the best character in the film, and we got to deal with this fucking pant load the rest of the
Yeah.
Like, really?
The shitty ass friend.
Yeah. I hope he gets it too.
Mm-hmm.
But I think again though, if Chris wasn't as bad as he was, it wouldn't have made it as impactful. Because I feel like if they were both buddies and everybody liked them and they were both positive or they were whatever, it's like, oh, that sucks. But we still have
But
Chris.
we got another,
Yeah, we still have Chris. So, I mean, he has to be the yin to the yang. And he was the good one. And it was like, no, dude, come on.
And he was just able to cram so much personality into you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I get it. But like, I'm not happy about it.
Well, I mean, because the whole time we've seen him, he's just trying to help his buddy.
Yeah.
That's it. He even says it. Dude, I'm being miserable with you to fucking help you not be miserable.
And even in his death, he's worried about his friend being happy.
Yeah.
It's like, God damn, dude.
Which, if he were in love with him, that tracks.
Yeah.
He just wanted him to be happy, even if it was with somebody else.
And Chris is like, where's that guy that I have around me sometimes?
Hulking out.
I think his name's JP or something like that. CJ or whatever. But Chris bounds out of his dorm room, running down the hall as fast as he can, and flashlight in hand, we watch as he enters the basement, lighting his way to the furnace. Purple and green lights leak in through the windows around him as he creeps his way past machinery. But when he rounds one last corner, he finds JC there on the floor, face down and dead. But above him are the foaming and sizzling shells of burned and defeated slugs. So it works.
Yeah.
It does, but I got to tell you, I'm devastated.
Oh, yeah. I love the lighting in the furnace room.
Mm-hmm.
It's maybe a boiler room, they call it. I don't know.
Whatever.
But I just really thought that it was a very interesting touch.
Right.
Because it's really one of those things, and I love when films do this, when it is kind of unnecessary, but just add a little bit of flavor.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we cut to the Beta fraternity brothers exiting their house in their tuxedos and making their way onto what appears to be a rented bus. A fraternity brother stands with a clipboard outside of the bus, and when asked where Brad is, he answers that he thinks Brad is bagging the formal action because he thinks Cindy blew him off. They laugh together about how bummed Brad must be, but we immediately cut to Brad, standing outside of the Delta Kappa sorority, downing a beer in a polo shirt and cursing Cynthia as he tosses a bottle onto the front lawn. Suddenly, a slug zips by into the bushes, which catches his attention, and as he kneels to try to figure out what it was, the house mother's dog walks down the sidewalk toward him, much dirtier and dingier than we last saw him. Brad asks the dog if he saw it, and when he turns to face the dog, it barks lowly, firing a slug directly into Brad's open mouth with a pulsive synth in the score.
I laughed out loud.
Yeah.
But when they were like, the dog ran off and we opened the door, I was like, we're seeing that dog later.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I'm waiting to see that dog again.
That was the funniest shit. How did he shoot that slug out of his mouth like that?
He's been practicing since earlier tonight.
But the Beta bus pulls away from the curb, the clipboard brother joining his fraternity, announcing to applause, "Let's blow this pop stand. We're gonna get done, dudes."
Okay. I was laughing at all of them bringing like beer steins onto the bus.
Yeah.
I thought that was ridiculous.
It's a little odd.
Just that poor bus driver. He's like, guys, can you
Yeah.
please?
Pipe it down.
Sloshing and just making a mess. I will say I did hear on commentary as well, the head of transportation for the film plays the bus driver in the film.
I love that.
That's really cool.
But we then see Ray resting on his couch at home with a beer and a cigarette, the ceiling fan whirring overhead and jazz playing lowly in the background as he whistles along to it. He plays with his lighter and continues to whistle, even when there's a sudden knock at the door. When it continues to disrupt his evening, Ray rushes towards the door, tearing away strips of duct tape which line the edges of the door frame. You think in this moment that it's about the slugs not getting in.
Yeah.
It's not. He rips the door open to find a solemn Chris standing there, who tells him tearfully, they got alfalfa. He explains that they get in through your mouth, and then they lay eggs in your brain, and you walk around while they incubate, even if you're dead. We watch as Ray gets ready, snagging his pistol and holster, his coat and shotgun. All the while, the camera presses in on his opened oven, hissing loudly, every dial turned and the gas filling the room. Ray closes it, switching the knobs to the off position and sarcastically spitting out one word. Wonderful.
Again, surprisingly fucking heavy.
Yeah. When he closed the oven, I was like, oh, and then he turned the knobs. I was like, oh
my
shit.
God.
Yeah. And they had talked about it on commentary, and it really is just like a very, very good piece of filmmaking and storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
This slow press in, you don't need to know anything.
No.
Yeah.
You understand everything and what's happening here.
And it really is just a good example of show don't tell.
Yes.
You know, because this scene could have been very long. Like we could have, we don't need that. This is enough of an impact. It's enough to tell us exactly what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And he's playing with the lighter.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, as grim as this scene portends, it is foreshadowing.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
It really is.
But the party is well underway on the Beta bus, brothers drinking, clinking steins, and cheering wildly. All is well until the bus driver notices something in the road. It's the house mother's dog, who stands there menacingly with his teeth bared and his eyes ringed and red. The driver swerves out of the way, colliding with the car in the other lane, his eyes seemingly bursting out of his head.
Yeah.
It's like a cartoon.
All of this was great because
Yeah.
when he's telling them to stop, his mouth isn't matching anything of what he's saying. And then I'm like, did the dog plan that out?
Yeah.
Like, is the dog like MVP? Like,
Well, you notice these slugs are like, dude, we're keeping with this dog.
yeah.
Seems to be working pretty well.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question was, so the dog is able to, like, I guess work with the slugs? It's like, look, I'll let you have my brain, but you got to let me run around as me.
Or maybe the dog was always evil. I don't know.
No, maybe.
Maybe they had a deal, 30 years ago after the fact.
Him crashing, though, and his eyes did remind me of the Large Marge scene from
Yes, yes.
But we match cut from the headlights of the car to the beaming light above a staircase that Ray and Chris are walking down together at the police station. They reach the fenced-in armory and meet Walt, a cop played by Dick Miller. On commentary, they mentioned that Dick Miller is kind of considered a good luck charm for filmmakers.
Oh,
Okay.
And how many people he's worked with and what he's appeared in.
Yeah. Well, he's another one of those that you always see him and stuff. And it's like, I know that dude. For me, of course, it's Gremlins.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
He also did The Terminator in 84 as well. The Burbs in 89.
Oh,
And Demon Knight in 95.
Really?
damn.
Yeah.
They had talked about working with James Cameron, which you said,
Yeah.
Joe Dante, but apparently he is in a ton of Roger Corman pictures too.
Oh,
So
That's-
it's prolific.
Oh, yeah.
But Walt greets Ray jovially, seemingly surprised to see him down here. He attempts to greet Chris, but Chris doesn't respond, even when Walt expresses confusion at his fancy outfit, wondering if tonight is actually Halloween and he missed the memo. But he asks what he can do for them, and Ray tells Walt that what he really needs is your basic flamethrower.
oh, that's all.
Yeah.
Walt is taken aback, asking if Ray's old snub nose isn't good enough for him anymore, but he actually goes into the back room and retrieves a flamethrower.
That was funny.
I was like, really? But he warns Ray that they have to watch out for this baby because once you light the pilot, it goes out and plays hard to get.
I'm sure that it's fine.
Yeah.
Ray thanks him, and Walt is ready to give him the heavy artillery as soon as he shows him the requisition form for it. But Ray, loading his shotgun, says that the thing is, he doesn't have a requisition form. Walt acknowledges that, unfortunately, that could be a problem, and Ray agrees, racking the shotgun and aiming it through the hole in the fence, repeating, "There could be a little problem."
He said, call an ambulance, but not for me. I was already laughing at the start of the scene of how he's casually walking around with the shotgun.
Yeah.
And again, props to this movie for him believing everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Being suspicious immediately. They don't like fire. Bet we'll get a fucking flamethrower. Like, there is no time wasted trying to convince this man that something fucking weird is going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this. He's gonna get in a lot of trouble for this. He is stealing from their armory or whatever. But I mean, I think the whole squad that we just had seen what happened outside.
Yeah.
I think we're okay. I can borrow this, dude. I know you've been down here, but
You're so right.
Yeah.
I've bought in so much every step of the way that I did not even think deeply enough that it's like, look, ask fucking De Palma or whatever.
That's so true. But we cut back to the bus crash, twisted metal shimmering and steam hissing into the night. The house mother's dog sits on the curb, growling as he surveys the overturned bus and the battered and bloody bodies therein. He then walks over to the bus, clearly on a mission as he hops into the wreckage through the missing windshield.
Zombie of the month.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. He's racking up the body count.
Top dog.
Yeah.
But we cut to the inside of the Kappa Delta sorority house, where an impatient knock is heard on the front door. Lisa, played by Suzanne Snyder, stands at the top of the stairs, announcing with annoyance, "I'm so sure. Don't everybody run to the door at once." She makes her way over to it, turning the knob to find Brad standing there, pallid as a cadaver, his eyes a milky white as they stare directly at her. She just repeats, "I'm so sure," before sarcastically telling Brad that he's very funny.
She's like, Brad, you look like shit. It was hilarious to me that he knocked on the door.
Got a little of your
Yeah.
left in there.
That's so
Yeah.
funny.
But again, though, he does look like shit. But for them not to notice, does he look like this all the time, or is this what he looks like to y'all?
Just when he's been drinking.
Yeah.
But she calls up to Cynthia, alerting her of Brad's arrival. So, Suzanne Snyder, very small role in this film. We maybe see her running away a little bit later.
Yeah.
But you might remember her not only from 2 episodes of Seinfeld,
Okay.
but from Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
That's hilarious.
But we return to the crashed bus, surveying the smoking wreckage until the reanimated arms of Beta fraternity brothers smash through glass windows, climbing out of the overturned vehicle and onto the street. Their eyes vacant within their pale faces, their tuxedos torn and ragged, they shuffle through the night, one even dragging himself across the asphalt, leaving a smear of blood in his wake.
If I may for a moment.
Yes.
I thought it was really interesting that Howard Berger and Robert Kurtzman worked on this.
Mm-hmm.
David B. Miller brought them on. But Howard Berger said that a big perk of working on this was a lot of the times with some films, it's like an assembly line thing where you make a piece of something and then you pass it on and somebody else finishes it. But that Miller had told them, you finish your pieces from start to finish.
Oh, wow.
That the time constraint was so strict that like they were responsible for their own. And it was funny listening to the actors talk about, oh, all we did was laugh. Like we had so much fun. It was the most laid back set. And the effects guys were like, tempers were high. Like they were like, they had to do a lot in a very short amount of time.
Yeah.
I read in Fangoria they wanted 12 to 16 weeks of pre-production and they only got 8.
Well, it makes sense why tempers were high.
Yeah.
But Berger and Kurtzman talked about Miller telling them, because they didn't have time to bring a lot of actors in, life cast them, do all these things for the heads and stuff. He was like, look, why don't you just do it on yourself? Make a life cast of your own head, do your own zombie makeup, and then you can be zombies later on. So that's why a lot of them are the fraternity brothers. It's just so, and it works so perfectly.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like that would be, instead of bringing somebody else, and it's like you already know what's going on.
Yeah.
You just, like you said, do the makeup on yourself and then
Show up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, that is so genius. I bet they had so much fun.
Oh, yeah. But back at the sorority house, the Platters' Smoke Gets in Your Eyes plays again. the romantic melody accompanying Cynthia's descent from the staircase into the front door. She notices Brad, but clearly doesn't get a good enough look at him, her head down as she walks onto the porch with him, taking his hand in hers as she sits down with him on the steps. Cynthia, still looking away from Brad, promises him that she was going to call, telling him that she's sorry things didn't work out. They're just two different people, but it doesn't mean that it's over forever. The camera arcs around her to reveal Brad's frightful face, his mouth wide open, as several slugs pour out and land with a sickly splat on the brick below. Did this remind anybody of that, scare in Ouija Origin of Evil?
Oh, okay.
There is no hyperbole. That's one of the scariest fucking things I've ever seen.
Literally. No, it's terrifying.
But Cynthia shares that she just needs a little more time to think, which honestly surprised me.
Yeah.
Yes.
But before she can continue, Chris and Ray arrive on the scene, Chris warning his date to get away from it. Cynthia turns to finally see Brad as the monster he's become, or maybe has always been.
Yeah.
But she screams in horror as Ray raises his gun and fires it into the center of Brad's forehead. At the sight of the bullet wound, Brad's head splits open, making way for a sea of slugs to rain from it. But Chris quickly aims the flamethrower, barbecuing Brad's body and sending the series of slugs to their certain death.
I was a little surprised that Ray let Chris have the flamethrower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, if I'm Chris, even in the midst of all of these slugs and zombies and whatnot, I'd be like, were you getting back together with him? Or what were y'all talking about?
Yeah,
Why were you
I heard the tail end of that.
Yeah, and I didn't like what I heard.
Mm-mm.
Cynthia.
You were my soulmate, I thought.
Cynthia.
From the one conversation we had.
Yeah, from seeing you across the street.
But Chris gulps as he watches Brad's face crackle beneath the fire, offering an apology and telling Brad that it wasn't personal. Now, that's what Brad said to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
well,
I mean,
no, it's good. It's good. I'll give him that. I'll give him that one.
Still hate him, but
Yeah, he's not great.
no. But as Brad's body collapses to the ground, Ray hands Chris his shotgun before heading inside the sorority house. Lisa scolds that he can't come in here and that she's going to call the police, and Ray encourages her to do that. Now. But back outside, Chris apologizes for disposing of Brad, promising that he didn't know it was him. It's like, you knew it was him?
Yeah,
Yes, you did.
You had that line queued up, dude. But he hands her Ray's shotgun, telling her to hold it because it'll make her feel better. She takes it into her hands, but suddenly gasps as she gazes out onto the lawn. There, the beta zombies have arrived, shuffling their way toward the pair, all stained in blood from the bus crash, one dragging himself through the grass inch by inch, with the music rising eerily as a faceless beta brother steps into the frame, his flesh hanging in ribbons around his skeletal stare and smile as he shrieks into the night. Pretty cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know, really, where was he during that bus crash?
It doesn't matter.
Or did the dog have a snack before we?
I mean, that dog was...
He's earned it.
Yeah, he earned it.
But Ray peers out from the window inside, offering the sorority sisters good news and bad news. The good news is that their dates are here. And the bad news, they're dead.
All right.
Iconic.
It's so good. And Fred Dekker, he said, I had no idea when I wrote that it would be a thing. He's like, it's a ridiculous line.
Yeah.
It's just so good. It's Tom Atkins.
That's what it
it's
is.
so good.
Somehow, outside, Cynthia now has the flamethrower strapped on, and Chris is holding the shotgun.
He's like, did Brad ever let you hold a flamethrower?
He talks her through using it, begging her to fire it as she stands there frozen. He tells her to fire when he does, counting down from 3 as he blasts the nearest zombie with the shotgun. And as his head splits open, Cynthia snaps into action, lighting him and his brain slugs up with the flamethrower.
I'm glad because I was starting to think that she was mad that he had killed Brad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're just standing there. Do something.
Well, Brad was being perfect.
Okay.
So,
All right.
no, but fuck Brad. I'm just kidding.
No. But inside, Ray urges Karen to lock the patio door. and she understandably has some anxiety about approaching these doors again, so she does so cautiously. But as soon as she reaches for the handle, a beta brother bashes through the glass and breaks inside the house. Ray tells her to duck, firing a shot into the center of the zombie's forehead after announcing, "It's Miller time." It's like, really?
Yeah, all right.
It was funny because on that making of, he was talking about all the cool one-liners he got to say, and he was saying how much everybody loves "Thrill Me," and talking about running into a woman at a grocery store one time, and she had put "Thrill Me" as the tagline for her business, and she had it on like a bunch of pencils, and she gave it to him or whatever, and he was like, I got to call them all these nicknames, and like, "It's Miller time." That was a good one.
But the zombie falls to the floor, his head wide open. But before his slugs can make a break for it, Ray snags a can of hairspray, using the cherry of his cigarette to burn them. Some sorority sisters head outside against Ray's protests, reacting in terror as Chris and Cynthia work in tandem, blasting and burning any beta brothers that get in their way. But back inside, a couple of beta brothers break in, and tension mounts as Ray slowly loads his revolver next to a kneeling Karen. As soon as he has it loaded, though, we see Karen rise up, now a zombie herself, seizing Ray and pulling him to the ground. Did this remind anyone of Evil Dead?
Okay, I can see that.
All right.
Like the way that she's sitting and then now she's...
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
All right.
But as he struggles against her and reaches for his gun, he notices something on the wall. A frame of photographs commemorating sorority sisters from 1959, and one of the cutout photos is the smiling face of his lost love, Pam.
Aww.
This gives Ray the strength to reach his pistol, firing it at Karen, and then rising up to his feet and firing wildly in a circle as he screams. This reminded me a lot of this like moment in the Hills Have Eyes remake that is kind of like cheesy and annoying.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember it, but and I don't want to give too much away, but there is this guy who's fighting one of the things. I think they're creatures of some kind. I don't know what the fuck they are, dude. They're weird. They're really, really weird. But he's losing the fight clearly. And then he's getting his ass kicked. And he looks down at his wedding ring and suddenly he gets the strength to do whatever he needs to do. It's a very sweet moment when you think about it, but I guess when I started the sentence, I was a little more critical. But it does remind me of this.
It's the power of love.
Yes, which we all understand. It's universal. And I did hear on commentary the way they accomplished this shot is they literally just put Tom Atkins on a rig and just spun him.
Yeah.
But outside, Chris and Cynthia are backed into the backyard by encroaching zombies. Cynthia asking, "Don't any of these creeps take no for an answer?" Chris asks how many more of them are there as he tries to load the jammed shotgun. He finally does, though, firing it, but only blowing off half of the face of the zombie in front of him. Chris begs to be given a fucking break as the zombies continue after them, but when they turn around, they find the zombified body of Steve slowly approaching them. Cynthia screams, alerting Chris to a nearby padlocked door and telling him to smash it so they can make their escape into a shed. They do so by the skin of their teeth, blocking the door as soon as they get inside.
At least they were polite enough to let them get inside the shed because they really did wait.
They're like, hold on, let's see what they're going with this. Realizing they're trapped, Chris gives Cynthia a sarcastic thumbs up, telling her, "Real good plan."
Yeah, she's the only one who moved. You were standing there, and now you have an extra, 5 minutes to regroup and try to load the shotgun or figure something out?
Mm-hmm.
Light his ass up.
Yeah.
Unpopular opinion, cook him.
Yeah,
He was
a zombie.
turning into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all saw it.
Mm-hmm. The creeps begin bashing their way in, one seizing Chris as he smashes through one of the walls. Chris tries to wriggle away, finding his opportunity when Cynthia forces the flamethrower into the creep's face and lights him up, exploding his head and the slugs within it. She shrugs, a little proud of herself, but is promptly snatched up by an intruding, zombified Steve. She screams for help as she struggles against him, but Chris notices a nearby lawnmower, pulling the starter cord to get the motor running. After about 8 tries, he finally gets it going, screaming for Cynthia to get out of there. He arcs the lawnmower blades upward, announcing, "Later, dude," before pushing it forward and slicing through Steve's face. The blood was not there on the day. It doesn't look like it. I will say it definitely appears like that was added in post.
Yeah.
But I did read it was this entire scene with the garden shed was accomplished because of studio mandated reshoots.
Okay.
It wasn't here at all in the original cut of the film, and so they had to rebuild a set that looked like the real shed outside of the sorority house.
Damn.
And so this entire sequence was not in the original film.
Huh.
Were they just like more of the two of them fighting zombies, or like, I wonder what the note was.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that was part of it. Another part of it is, I guess they had a really disastrous preview screening. And part of the reason is because, from what I understand, the film wasn't finished. And so we had a part of the film that kind of happens at the end, but they didn't have the part of it that explains it in the beginning of the film yet. And so the test audiences was like, we don't understand what's going on. And they were like, well, you got to read the script. They're like, read the script?
Yeah,
it's a movie.
Yeah. And so that kind of got, and part of these reshoots was the garden shed sequence.
I would have liked it better if Chris said, "Your ass is grass."
Yeah. Later, dude isn't really.
Yeah.
That would have been good.
But then again, it's just like Tom Atkins gets away with It's Miller Time, and we're like, I don't think so. So maybe I think it might be a little more personal.
Maybe.
But back inside, the camera rises above Ray, who sits on his knees in the middle of the floor, bodies strewn about, blood staining the walls, and the distressed detective catching his breath. On the lawn, however, Chris shuts off the flamethrower that Cynthia is still wearing, but as slugs slink by them on the lawn, Chris watches as they slither into an opened window at the bottom of the house, into the basement.
Remember?
Yeah.
Chris asks what could be down there, and Cynthia answers, storage, boxes, one of the girls' science projects. And after a moment, Cynthia remembers just what that project was, gasping, "Oh my God." The pair head inside and down the hall, Chris clearing the house of the sorority sisters. As they make their exit, Chris and Cynthia slowly creep their way down into the basement. The beam of their flashlight searches around until they find Ray standing there with a bit of duct tape over his mouth. As he quickly unscrews the lid on a can of gasoline, his muffled voice screams for Chris to get out of here, to take Cynthia and get out now. The beam of Chris's flashlight then finds what Ray is attempting to destroy, a wall of slugs, concentrated in the corner of the basement, squealing and wriggling with malicious intent.
I was floored to find out on the making of that squiggly wall was stop motion.
Yeah.
And that they had like 2 weeks to put it together.
Damn, it looks good.
Yeah,
It does. It's a really good visual to have at the end.
Yeah.
And they've been, you've seen them sliding through the grass and going into a part at the bottom of the house, and you don't even think about it.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh.
Of course you were.
Chris attempts to start the flamethrower, but it clicks dry and useless. Ray then tears the duct tape from his face, and a slug attempts to seize this opportunity, only to be caught mid-air by Ray, who tells it, "Don't even think about it, you little son of a bitch."
He's the man.
Yeah.
He tosses it aside and then announces to Chris and Cynthia, 20. He grabs the can of gasoline as the pair begin to back away towards the exit. 19. He douses the slugs in the liquid and the walls around it. 18. He gives Chris a knowing look and wink as Chris smiles in understanding, turning around to take Cynthia upstairs with him.
I wanted him to put up more of a fight.
Yeah.
But he's just like, "You want to stop Snape from getting that stone or not?" It's like, dude, he's fucking gonna sacrifice himself. Please, there's got to be another way.
So you got it, boss.
He's like, "Let's get out of here."
Well, Loomis survived. He might have a chance.
You know what?
And
Fair enough.
He is wearing Loomis's coat.
Yeah.
One thing they did mention on commentary is that this is kind of supposed to be the resolution of that conversation in his apartment.
Okay.
And him saying, she continues to live, and Pam, this is what happened to her.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's kind of a repeat of that with him letting Chris and Cynthia go.
Yeah.
So it's a parallel to a really sad thing,
Very sad.
but it works very well.
He's like, she's not lying in a coffin somewhere,
And his brain's leaking. I will say there's a lot of brains leaking in this. But Ray continues his countdown, as does Chris as he and Cynthia run through the halls and out of the front door of the sorority house. Chris and Cynthia join the gathered crowd of sorority sisters in the street, forcing them back as Chris reaches 6. In the basement, Ray counts down 5, 4, 3, as he gazes at the multitudinous mound of monstrosity. They slither around his jacket as outside Chris reaches 1. He gives the order. Detective, thrill me. And just as the mound springs to life directly for Ray, he flicks on his lighter, and the Kappa Delta sorority house explodes into a ball of fire, flames engulfing the structure as Detective Landis and other personnel arrive on the scene. We then get a shot of a single pink rose on the front yard, still vibrant and alive against the fire raging behind it. I told you to remember that rose!
Yes!
But as sirens wail in the distance, fast approaching the burning building, Cynthia holds the lapels of Chris's jacket, telling him, "Nice tucks," before planting a kiss on his lips.
I mean, good for Chris, I guess. I just, I need the records to show that although he shockingly did not in this particular film, Tom Atkins still fucks.
Yeah.
I just need everyone to know that.
It happened off screen.
It happened off screen, for sure.
I will say this is where the theatrical release of the film breaks from the version that we saw on streaming.
Oh.
And apparently it seems as if the version that we saw is the one that's the most readily available. But in the theatrical version that they forced with these mandated reshoots is they're standing there, they kiss, and then the house mother's dog rocks up and stands in front of them in front of the burning house, and Cynthia goes to pet it, and the last shot of the film is the dog barking a slug at us.
Oh, God.
Not at us.
Yes. And so literally it's,
They said needs more zombie dog.
Yeah.
Got it.
and so that was the end of the film, and we don't see anything that we're about to talk about.
Yeah.
And I think Fred Dekker didn't like it.
Well, yeah.
I mean, but we will continue with the director's cut, apparently, of the film.
All right.
But on an adjacent street, emergency vehicles whizzing past to the scene of the blaze, we see the charred and smoldering body of Ray, still smoking his cigarette as he limps lifelessly in the dark.
It's giving Gustavo Fring.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, he's just a little airborne. Like,
Yeah.
he's okay.
It's like, he's fine. I hoped.
Yeah.
But he crumbles to the ground, and as soon as he hits the asphalt, slugs pour from an opening at the top of his skull. They slither through a nearby gate, the camera panning from the moss-covered stone to find, with a musical sting, a large bronze sign reading, Crest Ridge Cemetery.
No!
The camera rises above the wall and into the cemetery, stopping at a long path lined with gravestones. Suddenly, a searchlight beams from overhead, and we see where it's beaming from. The alien spaceship from the beginning of the film, in a quest to recover their lost experiment. We fade to black, and the credits roll. So, what did you guys think of Night of the Creeps?
I really enjoyed this movie for what it is. Like I had stated up top, I had never seen the movie, heard about it before we started doing this, and I'm a little sad that I don't know this movie, have a better relationship with it. But I am glad that I got to see it now as an adult, because I do think that some of the things they do do in the movie, if I were to watch it when I was a little younger, I probably would have got taken out of it. You know what I mean? Been like, oh, that's too a love story, whatever. But again, being older and watching, be like, oh no, this mixes everything I like, and it's great. They do a really good job of the acting and it being a B horror movie, and like I said, not taking it serious at all. You know what I mean? It knows what it is. But I really, really would recommend anyone watch this movie. I don't know if there's any more like after this, like I'm like sequels or whatever.
I don't know either, but that seemed like they were setting up.
Yeah.
So maybe something to look into. But just even this on its own, I would recommend anyone to watch this. It's just a fun time. There's nothing to really sit in there and have to think about other than like what they give us is what we see. You know what I mean? And I know Chris does suck, but I feel like we need him to suck so JC can shine.
Fair.
And it is their matching, I think, that works good. I think besides Tom Atkins, I don't really think anybody else, not that their characters don't matter, but they are just there filling a part. But they do it so good.
Yeah.
They do what they're supposed to.
No, I totally agree. This was such a treat, honestly. I know obviously we have several requests for it. I can't be like, oh, nobody's talking about this or whatever, because clearly it is beloved. But I don't know how it was literally never, all three of us, never on our radar. It's just weird to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was such a treat to visit this, even being kind of like bummed that it's the first time that I've seen it. It is, like you said, at least I've seen it now. You know, I'm glad that I've seen it now because it will definitely be going into the rotation. I think that it really expertly straddles this line of just ridiculousness, comedy, horror, sci-fi, like you said, not taking itself too seriously while still having this weirdly heavy emotional weight to some of the scenes. And again, JC, I love him. He's so good in this. You really care about him. And so when, unfortunately, he does meet his end, you kind of take comfort in the fact that he did figure it out for the rest of them. And, you know, I'm just bummed. Which again is something that you wouldn't really expect to take away from this. I was very sad at the end with Ray.
Yeah.
I didn't think that, I thought that he would make it when he's kind of like stumbling out or whatever. It's like, okay, oh, never mind. But it's just a good time. It's just a blast. And I will say, for a directorial debut, I am genuinely blown away. Thrown away.
They're gonna say
thrilled. It really shows, having all of these Easter eggs and all these characters named after these like giant horror directors, that this is a student of horror. That you can take so many elements. Like, what did you say? A stew?
Yeah.
That's exactly what this is. And it's done in such a way. It's got such a clear identity. I'm very impressed that this is the first, feature film that Dekker directed.
Yeah.
I mean, we already knew he had the writing chops.
Yeah. Apparently. Yes.
But yeah, no, this was just a really fucking good time, and I'm so glad that so many people asked for it and that we finally got to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I agree completely. And it also makes me want to check out Monster Squad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
I've never seen it.
Me neither.
I watched it when I was really young. I remember bits and pieces of it, but I would love to go back and watch that.
Okay.
Well, maybe add it to the list.
Right?
Yeah.
But no, I do. I really think that this film is just a bunch of fun. It is definitely kind of turn your brain off. But at the same time, it is very, very much a love letter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To not only B movies, but a lot of old sci-fi films and the horror genre as a whole.
Yeah.
And I do I'm put in the same mind of whenever we first watched Return of the Living Dead.
Yes.
And
okay.
Like Lamberto Bava's Demons. Where it's like, how did we miss these?
Yeah.
How is it possible that they just flew by all three of us? And so again, it is very, very rewarding to discover films of this caliber and quality at this stage.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we consume a lot of horror, I would say. And so it's just very, very wonderful. And again, can't thank everyone enough for suggesting it.
Yeah.
Because I had never in my life heard of this film. And it's just adding more and more into the pedigree of fucking Tom Atkins.
Yes.
This man is a machine. But I guess we can slide into ratings. I don't need to be very long-winded. For me personally, I really think that there is a lot of really, really good work here, a lot of excellent homages. That opening black and white sequence.
Yeah.
It is such a perfectly realized little love letter to a very specific era of film, and they do it so well.
Yeah.
I really, really appreciated that. There are things that, don't really work out for me. I don't at all like those aliens. I've made it very clear.
Well, luckily they were relegated to the first minute and a half, and then we'd never have to look at them again.
Like, can we just show the spaceship? That's fine. That's fine. But I think that, again, it is one of those things. It's like a little test of, are you guys cool or not?
Yeah.
But I think that it is very, very cool as well that it does, like you said, straddle so many things. There is a bit of detective mystery in there.
Yes.
There's the sci-fi stuff. There's the body horror. There are zombies.
Yeah.
It is so many things.
Aliens.
It's very difficult to make all of these things work. And he had talked about it where in some interviews he had said that the idea for the film was all of these B movies and kind of mashing them together in that way. Another thing, he had said that his original idea was the phrase "thrill me." And that it came from a detective, and he's like, well, what's this detective doing? And then it just starts from there.
I love it.
And so you get all of these different elements. He had ideas of those two college boys, and he's like, well, how does that fit in with the detective? And puts it all together with all of this sci-fi B-movie pastiche, and it's like,
I'm so envious.
yeah, it takes a very, very creative mind to do something like this.
Yeah.
And for it to feel, and it very easily could have fallen into the realm of parody, but it didn't.
Yeah.
And I think that's a credit to the filmmaker. I think it's a credit as well to the crafting of a lot of these more suspenseful, intense scenes. There's some shit that's actually pretty scary in here.
Yeah.
Like the scene, like his nightmare.
Yes.
There's some really, really good moments here. And I think that this is just a fun one to watch and to return to. I really appreciate the effects work. I love the score a lot. I think that it's just a real treat, I will say.
Yeah.
But as I compared it to Demons and Return of the Living Dead, I think I do like those films a little bit more. I think for me, just some of the character moments don't really work for me. I would appreciate some of the dropped little things to have meaning, or these odd cuts that can be explained away as it's a B movie.
Yeah.
But for me, it's but why did he have flowers? Why did he have the tape recorder? Why,
Right.
that could be, cool moments that weren't there.
Yeah.
But for me, on a scale of 1 to 10, sinister slithering slugs, I am going to give Night of the Creeps a 7.5 sinister slithering slugs out of 10. I know that I'm going to watch this again and have fun with it.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
But I will now open the floor to you.
I think for me, it's a perfect blend of someone who does love cinema, period, in what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the cuts are kind of weird in there, but I think too, and I will stand on this, if this was not a B horror movie, this would not work in any way, shape, or form, period.
Absolutely.
So it only speaks to the superiority of B horror movies.
Right.
I'm just saying.
Let the record
That's
show.
right.
Objection.
But I mean, it is that, like you were saying, T, the love that they put into it, how much they did have fun, and it is that perfect blend. But again, like I said, I feel like if it went too much into the parody, it wouldn't work. It would just be too silly, and you'd be like, whatever. And if it took itself too serious, it'd be like, nah, this is not what that is.
And he hedged his bets, and he had said in Fangoria, he said, look, if you watch this film and you're scared, fantastic. You watch this film and you laugh, awesome.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a little something for everybody.
Yeah, and it does it so well, and it's a good time. Even the little things, I think, because I like B horror, I can overlook it.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that too, Chris does suck, and it's like, dude, you're terrible. It isn't. It does hurt it when all you really care about is two of the characters out of this entire cast.
Yeah.
And it is a bit of a like, damn. So I do get what you're saying with the missed opportunities with the tape recorder and then everything else. Like, yeah, you could have brought a little more to that. And I think that too does hurt the movie for me. But I really, really enjoyed the shit out of this. This is one of those where I was like, man, this is pretty cool. I was like, this is really, really cool. But I do gotta agree. I do think that maybe Demons has a little more of an edge on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that only might be for me because of the motorbike scene inside that was amazing. Like, that was great.
It was iconic.
But again, it didn't have Tom Atkins. So it's like, damn it. How do I balance these things out? But I think on a scale from 1 to 10, sinister slithering slugs, I'm also going to give Night of the Creeps a 7.5. I had a lot of fun talking about it. And I do want to give it that extra half a point. But I do feel like me only having two people to be like, oh, cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then towards the end of the movie, it's like, oh, cool. We only have the guy we don't like left.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, all right. The alien saved it for me, honestly, because I forgot all about him. And then when I seen it, I was like, what, in the Star Wars? But it was like, oh, yeah, the alien.
Yeah, I did too. I completely forgot. No, I agree with both of y'all. I think that where it kind of falters for me is the character work. I think even Cynthia, I would have liked a little bit more from. Maybe this transformation of like being with this dick ass dude and then kind of finding her own. And at the end, she's this bad bitch with a flamethrower.
Yeah.
I feel like that evolution isn't really there, especially at the end when she's like, well, you know what? Like, maybe we can get back together or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I just need to like think about it. But I would have liked more of that. I think that we like even in The Blob, this transformation of this, woman into like this badass toward the end.
Yeah.
I would have liked that. I like you said, I really only care about JC and Ray, and they don't make it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Which sucks, but I think that it's just still so much fun. And I feel like you said, hedging his bets, I feel like anything that I could complain about, it's like, well, duh, it's a B movie. Well, duh, that's not what we were doing. Like, you saw those aliens at the beginning. Like, bitch, what were you expecting? But I just have to really praise, like you were saying, T, the creativity. I really love Ray and JC. I love the one-liners. I love the practical effects. I love how all over the place this story is. I love that nightmare sequence.
Yeah.
I love the black and white segment toward the beginning. There is so much to take away from this. It's just a really fucking good time.
Mm-hmm.
Thrill me. That's a gift. I get to take that forward the rest of my life. That's a fun. Thank you. Like, that is a gift. That was free. No, it's like I said, it's just fun. And would I have liked a little bit more in some aspects? Of course, absolutely. Does that break it for me? No. I know that that's not what this is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm okay. Like, that's fine. But can wrap it up instead of, rambling some more. On a scale from 1 to 10, sinister slithering slugs.
You got it.
It's a lot of S's. Not my strong suit. I gave Night of the Creeps 8 out of 10 sinister slithering slugs.
Mm-hmm.
It's just fun, man. It's just a really good time. And if you are like us and somehow in 2024 you have not seen this, go fucking watch it, man. It's
Please.
Tom Atkins. He fucks.
That's a plus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's all from us at Pod Mortem. What would you rate Night of the Creeps, and what should we watch next? Let us know on Twitter at the Pod Mortem. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and like our Stairhole Productions page on Facebook. Be sure to follow each of us on Twitter at TravisMWH, at Blood and Smoke, and at RealStreeter84. Thanks again to Original Cinematic for sponsoring this week's episode. Please consider pledging to our Patreon, where you'll gain access to bonus content, our monthly schedule, our Discord server, and the opportunity to help us decide which films to cover. Stay tuned until after the music for a special thank you to our Wendigo Getter patrons. And remember, never sacrifice your ideals for the sake of conformity. Stay true to yourself and don't let the wrong influences into your head. Until next time. Thank you for staying tuned. We want to give a very special thank you to all of our Wendigo Getter patrons.
Woo, yeah.
Very good. A special thank you to
Chris Ontiveros, Kristen Lofton, Megan Martinez, Kimberly Bass, Sophie Hodson, Anthony Jerome M., Jordan Nash, Kent Morton, Lala Thomas, Travis Anissa Hunter, Miguel Myers ATX, Jennifer Perez, Allison O'Neill, Carissa, TJ and Angie Bronson, Gabrielle Trevino, Spooky Mom, Applin Ontiveros, Karima Rhodes, Antonio Huerta, Kimberly Kleindienst, Will Brown, Sydney Smith, Osvaldo Soto, Bobby Holmes, Donna Eason, JD Rizak, Molly Gerhart, Armand Spasto, Aaron Aguirre, Eggy, William Barry, Brittany Seaman, Charity Oxner, Amanda Six, Mandy Rainwater, Jordan Roberts, Dylan, Jordan Blevins, Liz Heath, Spencer Montalvo, Pancake the Panda, John Ramos, Michael Newding, Alexis Roberts, Dan Laveau, Itzy M, Gary Horton, Leisha Olivier, Kate Lamp, Carlos and Sydney, Jessica Hunter, Helena Rudder, Alan Johnston, Mariah, Livy Fun, Scott Troutman Wise, Towton Watson, Mozzie Bear, Brittany G, Dave Burke, Adrian Stakes, Daniel McGinnis, Nick Spill, Emma Hagel Kissinger, Valerie G, Emiliana, Brian Glass, CB, Taylor Santana, Will Lewison, Angelique, Smelly Poo Poo Head, Beth Bauer,
Cookie, Esperanza J, Jason Kyle OKC, Danielle Peralta, Brandon, Sawyer Reese Farr, Dr. Diva Loves Horror, Girl That's Scary, Cassandra, Andrea Simmons, Ashley Higuera, William and Xxena Rush, Ryan Brom, Megan Ochoa, Laura Lassiter, Eileen O, Marissa E, Sydney, Henry F, Megan M, Strangely Sarah, Christy Beck, Nancy and Andy, Amanda Lopez, Andy Terrell, Jason Hanavan, Katie K, Erica Morin, Cameron S, Nicole Stewart, Tris Wynn, K.87, Mariah Jensen, Carrie A, Lonnie Lono, Powell, Kayla E, Maggie H, Murder Stina, No Thanks Tom Hanks, Kevin McConicle, Kristen Marcy, Ori81 Boricua, Look Like That One Girl, Bog Boy, Felnez63, Alita Pui, Probably My Jugs, Kate Thackeray, Wade Pack, A Lizard, Bay J, Jay Rich, Jen Lassiter, Topher Williams, Elena Metler, Jean Jacket, Valerie K, Christy Lee Kruger, Professor of Humanities, Laura McCarricker, Naomi, Josh Smith,
Abby Kopp, Crystal 831, Skank Sinatra, Morgan Alexander, Tony Osteen, Julie Fredborg, Rihanna S., Daniel Taylor, Anna Kate, Heather Ortiz, Jen T., Kim H., August, Vengeance Spirit, Sam J. Green, Kelly Glazyface Mac, Jenny May, Zoe Marie, Glittery Fab, Malik Caselli Armstrong, Scarly D., Toya Shea, Katie, Martin Shaw, Star, Tyler J., Daniel Dickerson, Jordan Gaddis, Cam Davies, Tanya Selvog, Patrick Hoagland, Raven, King Roger, D, Wesley Tart, Kristen Jackson, Jacob Nordberg, Spencer, Samantha, Damian Grant, Half Price Horror, Clemmy, Nisi Nay, Erica, Jason X Rules, Karen Burrows, 203 Duncan, Aaron Norman, Stephen Rogers, Victoria Smith, Corey Gillen, and Patricia A. Graham. Thank you all so much.
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank y'all.
We love each and every one of you. We appreciate all your support, and we hope you know that you thrill us.
Hey,
Hey.
that's right.
Yeah, we learned it from this picture. Until next time.